Preem drew back the privacy curtain, drew her spine up into perfect poise with the same almost imperceptible hand flourish she'd used the last half-dozen times and drew a tiny round of applause from Lozzie. "Here I am," she intoned, and took 2 steps forward out of the cubicle, into the seating area where we were all waiting for her between outfits. "Very blue," said Lozzie. "Very, very cuddly," I managed, trying not to stare too much. "Yes, Preem, you look very cuddly." I fought down a blush when Preem's milk-white eyes located me and stared back. Evelyn sucked on her teeth. Much more her style than the hoodie, or the loose blouse, but blue with blue does seem a touch like a rendering error in a video game. "Can't we compromise, the same skirt but in white or black?" "Purple," Preem intoned. "Purple is good too," Lozzie said. "Oh, the back is also good." She capered in a little circle around Preem, her pastel poncho fluttering. "Hold up." Rain pointed a finger gun at Preem. "I've actually got a question, if you don't mind, of course. Bit personal and all that." Preem turned her head to direct a silent stare at the request. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, my Rain senses were tingling. I detected a twinkle in her eye, hiding behind her oh-so-serious expression. "That a yes or a no?" Rain prompted. "Yes," Preem echoed. "Cool, okay. How do those things not give you terrible back pain?" Her faux serious expression crumbled a moment later, no match for Preem's poker face. "Rain!" I spluttered, and swatted her on the shoulder. Blushing, self-conscious and trying to look anywhere but at what she was referring to, I shot a glance back at the wide entranceway to the clothing shop's fitting area and changing rooms, where it opened back out into the brighter lights and softly muted colors of the display floor. The attendant lady at the service desk didn't appear to have overheard us, more interested in her glossy magazine. Evelyn sighed and rolled her eyes. Lozzie snorted. "Come on, she's probably heard worse." Rain stage whispered, nodding toward the attendant. "I bet people shag in these cubicles sometimes." "That doesn't make it okay," I hissed back. I glanced at Preem's impassive observation, then spared an involuntary flicker of my eyes down at the source of Rain's comment and had to avert my gaze again. However crude her phrasing, I had to begrudgingly admit that Rain had a good point. My eyes had betrayed me. Preem looked gorgeous. This morning, Evelyn had finally attempted to fix Preem's hair, still singed here and there and curled up at the ends from our crisis in Carcosa. With a pair of kitchen scissors and me hovering nervously within arm's reach and neither of us with any idea what we were doing, we'd been fully prepared to absolutely butcher Preem's beautiful cold blonde hair. But then Kimberly had appeared, by chance, and luck, and bless her for that, because it was Saturday and she wasn't at work. She'd seen us from the kitchen doorway. Poor Preem sat very still and uncomplaining in a chair, Evelyn frowning in concentration like she was defusing a bomb, the scissors poised to sever an entire springy lock. Kimberly had all but stumbled into the kitchen, with a "No, no, no. You need to wet her hair first, what are you doing?" "Please do," I'd added. Kimberly had gone in with spray bottle and comb and scissors, and done a much better job than we ever could. "It's not that difficult," she told us, snipping off stray singed hairs here and there, fingers and comb working in smooth strokes to isolate split ends. "I've never done it professionally, that's a whole school thing you have to do, but I've done it for friends and stuff. I can neaten up a mess. And this isn't too bad, not really. She's got a lot of hair and it's very thick, easy to work with." Preem was so impassive and still, it was like working on a doll. When she was all finished, Kimberly glowed with a satisfied smile, a rare, delicate thing like an exotic flower, a little jerky and nervous, but undeniably happy. She jokingly brushed off Preem's shoulders and said, "Anything else I can do for you, madam? Color, shampoo, blow dry?" "No, thank you," Preem had said, and Kimberly had jumped about a foot in the air. Renewed, Preem had pinned her freshly neatened hair up in a loose bun at the back of her head, a big trailing mess of blonde loops and loose strands. She seemed to prefer that, and would accept no efforts to tidy it up. If that's what you want, Evelyn had sighed. Most of Preem's bruises and cuts and scrapes were healed up now too, leaving only a few fading gazes and thin scabs on her knuckles. None of us said a word, of course, that her hair and skin and flesh were all pneumosomatic, a solid projection created by the abyssal soul inside a doll made of wood. If being human meant healing like a human, so be it. Which is also why nobody pointed out her hair gained 3 to 4 inches of length after being cut. As I said, gorgeous. Her current outfit the latest of about half a dozen different combinations she'd been trying on in the shop's fitting area for. Our varied opinions consisted of a long skirt the color of a clear sky seen from underwater, with a very high waist that hugged her abdomen. The waistband was a tall expanse of overlapping and interwoven ribbon material over the base fabric. I knew nothing about fashion, I wore shapeless layers more for protection and enclosure than appearance, but even I could tell that particular item was both fancy and probably quite expensive. But the skirt wasn't the problem. The problem was the thick, ribbed, polo neck sweater. A beautiful deep blue, tucked into the skirt, and fitting Preem perfectly. How could a cuffs-to-collar top put such emphasis on Preem's already substantial chest? Do not make her self-conscious, Evelyn growled at Rain. I will whack you so hard with my walking stick, they'll arrest me for grievous bodily harm. Boobage is fine. Lozzie agreed, puffing out her cheeks. Of course it's fine, of course. Rain held up both hands in surrender. Suits her, of course, perfect, elegant, beautiful. I'm just, mechanically curious how Preem doesn't get back pa dash. Because I am much stronger than you, Preem said in her sing-song voice. Rain burst out laughing. Evelyn rolled her eyes again. Lozzie said, big strong under her breath. Well, that's me told, Rain said. Fair point, rock on. I like them, Preem said, and made me blush beetroot red. Could we maybe stop talking about boobs? I asked. Quite, Evelyn grunted. It was lucky we were in here mostly alone. We'd been in the changing rooms now for a good 25 minutes while Preem tried on outfits, a mix and match of various promising prospects. She and Lozzie had piled up exciting clothes from the racks and display shelves out on the shop floor and then checked in with the attendant. 2 separate piles had grown either side of Evelyn on the little seating bench, one for items to purchase and one for rejects, next to the few bags of things we'd acquired from other shops. Slowly but surely we were building a mental picture of Preem's personal style, beyond variations on maid uniforms, plush, smooth, cuddly, and mostly unornamented. The store was called Hertelli's, buried deep in Swanbrook Mall, Sherrowford's only shopping center, an ugly labyrinth of fake marble floor tiles, gaudy kiosk stands, shiny chrome storefronts and too much glass everywhere. The mall sprawled out across 2 consolidated blocks next to Sherrowford's main high street, with metastasized extensions connecting to a massive MS department store in which Evelyn had purchased for Preem precisely 10 pairs of socks and 6 pairs of tights and the concrete shell of a multi-story car park. Hertelli's struck just the right balance between trendy and traditional for Preem, at least. I doubted Rain or Lozzie would have found anything to suit them here. The little fitting area was a major bonus, structured to allow exactly what we were doing right now, ringed with curtained cubicles on 2 sides and larger cubicles with doors in the back, all with full-length mirrors. It was so far the most successful shop we'd been to. The others on this windy and mild Saturday morning had yielded little to pique Preem's interest. Rain even drove. After a week of recovery she swore up and down that she was well enough to drive, that her left thigh was stiff but functional. She hadn't dialed back on the painkillers, which worried me, but she wasn't lying. I found it rather intoxicating in the end, watching her drive, watching her be in control, performing with skill. I was considerably less intoxicated when she needed to sit in the driver's seat for a full 10 minutes after we arrived, waiting for the ache to subside. It's cool, you can go on without me, she tried to shoo us out of the car. I'll catch up, I'm fine. I'll be fine, 5 minutes. Fine. You are a terrible liar, stop trying, Evelyn grumbled. Rain. I tooted. I'm not impatient, you dolt, I'm worried about you. I'm not going anywhere until you can stand up properly. And if you can't stand at all, then Preem is going to get behind the wheel and take us right home again. Aw, no, come on Dash. No buts. No but, Preem echoed me. So Rain had rested, rubbing her left knee, and we'd not needed to go home. We'd made a real day out of it so far, a kind of fun I was not used to. Shopping, as a teenager, had meant timidly trailing my mother around Reading Town Center, dragged up and down Broad Street in her infrequent efforts to acclimatize me to places other than home or hospital. I'd certainly never gone clothes shopping with friends, and the strange inherent intimacy surprised me. I'd never even really picked my own clothes before, just worn whatever my mother bought for me. First we went somewhere fancy, a little boutique shoe store called Klein, where I felt deeply uncomfortable and out of place and like everyone was looking at us. Then Evelyn spent almost £200 on a pair of boots for Preem and the glances changed. Then we tried Primark, a mistake. The place was wall-to-wall with young teenagers, lit up like a football pitch, and the women's clothing selection was what Evelyn derisively described as disposable rubbish. But this. Lozzie had held up a sort of weird floaty cross between a dress and a hoodie. It'll fall apart inside a month, Evelyn grumbled back, her shoulders hunched, grumpy around so many people. Besides, Preem isn't interested. Are you? Pajamas, Preem had said, staring halfway across the store. We'd left 10 minutes later with a set of tartan pajamas and lots of tooting from Evie. The trick, Heather, Evelyn explained to me later, after we'd left the mall to head down the high street and into a Superdry store which Lozzie had known about somehow, is that sometimes spending more money up front costs less in the long run. Rain was holding up a black and red jacket to Lozzie's front, to their shared interest, but I didn't like the Superdry store. Bright lights but dark surfaces, like my mental image of a nightclub, trendy and hip and covered in clean marketing full of perfect smiling people, nothing like the real lives that came in here for self-presentation. Though I did like the contents. Evie, I sighed. I can't justify £70 for a hoodie, no matter how pretty it is. And it was pretty. Dark pink, the color of shadow-soaked tropical petals, with palm-sized diamond patterning in lighter pink across the shoulders and upper arms, like lizard scales, with the hood and zipper and pockets rimmed in white. Thick fabric, double-stitched seams, the thing was like armor. I loved it the moment I saw it. Evelyn shrugged and glanced at Preem, who was staring at a selection of beanie hats but otherwise uninterested. Say you buy a £5 t-shirt from Primark, Evelyn continued, and the seams start to go within 6 months. Or you spend £20 on a t-shirt from somewhere like this, and you'll be wearing it for 20 years. I assume I don't need to do the maths for you. Well, that's obvious, but dash. How old do you think this is, Heather? Evelyn tilted her chin up. Evelyn had come out dressed as normal, wrapping herself in too many layers for her frame. She wore pajama bottoms tucked into her socks beneath a long skirt, and a t-shirt beneath a heavy cream jumper, coat over the top, though at least the pockets were flat today, all her magical detritus left at home. Today we were as normal as we could get. She was of course talking about the cream-colored jumper, the one she wore often. Thick enough to smother an elephant, the collar and cuffs and one armpit repaired with slightly different colored thread, the thing was obviously a little old. I'm not exactly good at fashion. 10 years? I guessed. 25. At least. I blinked. Are you serious? This jumper is older than me, she said, a little pleased with herself. My mother's, actually, but I'm not going to let that get in the way of quality. Things last, if you look after them, and you get what you pay for, in the long run. I glanced back at the hoodie with the beautiful scale patterns. An echo of reptilian life. Could clothing make up for a mental gap in my self-perception? But still. £70, I said. I'll buy it for you, if you want. Evie. Absolutely not. I couldn't let you do that. Oh, no, please don't, I dash. I'm doing it. She reached over to the rack of hoodies. But dash. Evelyn turned an unimpressed, dead-eye stare on me. Heather, we'll leave the theory to Rain, but the least I can do with my incredible level of class privilege is look after my friends. Now shut up and let me buy you a present. Well, I suppose, but Rain already bought me a hoodie. This one. I poked a pink cuff out from the end of my coat sleeve. It'll be a bit odd if you've both done it. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Is hoodie purchasing some sort of lesbian mating ritual that I'm unaware of? Are you duty-bound to climb into my bed if I get you this? I blushed and went quite still. I am mean, you're tea-taken dash. Evelyn's expression transformed into a perplexed frown. That was a joke, Heather. I'm not flirting with you. She sighed, and added under her breath, what does taken mean anyway? TCH. I let out a huge embarrassed sigh, color blooming in my cheeks. You kind of were. I hissed, and cast a glance at Rain, but she was just beyond earshot, watching Lozzie getting excited over an oversized hoodie with a sort of oil film rainbow tie-dye effect. I have enough trouble threading the needle between Rain and Jing lately without you flirting with me too. I thought that needle was thoroughly discarded by now, she grumbled, taking down the hoodie and checking the size label. Small, I assume. Yes, small. Obviously. And yes, I think. I couldn't use the needle to knit anything anyway. I don't know how to knit this weave. We are torturing this poor metaphor to death. Evelyn checked the hoodie over for loose threads as she spoke, almost deadpan. Are you bumping uglies with Zheng and I haven't noticed? I assumed she'd make a lot of noise, or make you make a lot of noise. One way or the other. Evie. And no, we're not. Just thought to check. You're being as bad as Rain, and no, I can't dash. Hat, Preem intoned from the blind spot over my shoulder. Boo-hoo. Lozzie rejoined us too, eyes going wide at the beanie Preem had pulled down over her hair. Velvet white, high quality, and rising at the top corners into a pair of cat ears. Oh, really? Evelyn huffed and tooted. That's so dash. I want one too, went Lozzie. Evelyn stifled a word inside a cough, which I'm pretty sure was tacky. Meow, said Preem. We left there with 2 hats, one in white for Preem, and one in pink for Lozzie. The rest of our route took us all the way down the high street, toward the big pedestrianized town square, lined with fast food places and bakeries and real estate agents and jewelers, all sterilized and clean, airdropped in from an external vision of a trendy northern city. Even the local numismatic life shunned the big open area with its clean white frontages and twee cafe seating. The spirits preferred to scurry across the rooftops in the corners of my vision. The real Sherrowford lurked at the threshold like an ancestral affliction, branching off into the warren of brick-paved lanes beyond the square, where the tall buildings cast deep shadows on unique shops and strange businesses. One of which was a women's underwear store catering to larger sizes. Evelyn assured me this was unique enough, believe me. Hey, no judging here, Rain said, deadly serious through her smile. Support's important, you know. Oh, right, of course, I'd said, stifling a blush. Evelyn took Preem to buy underwear, but Rain and Lozzie and I waited across on the other side the lane, window shopping in a bizarre little store which sold nothing but hand-carved wooden statues of animals. Inside, I happened across something remarkable, which had nothing to do with us. Lozzie took a liking to a carved ferret, about 10 times life size, and squealed with muffled joy. She would probably have stolen the thing if she could fit it under her poncho. Rain found a palm-sized tiger, and purchased it. I found a spirit. Attached to the ceiling with a mass of brown sticky webbing, hanging upside down and shaped like a splash of frozen muddy water caught in mid-air, the thing possessed 24 multi-joined limbs, spindly and precise, each one terminating in a numismatic approximation of a carving tool, chisels and knives and little scrapers. Its head was shaped like a CCTV camera, and it hung behind the store's owner, a middle-aged woman busy with the latest of her creations, breaking away only to take Rain's payment. She gave us warm smiles and answered Rain's polite, impressed questions with striking enthusiasm. A 3-foot carving of a crocodile lay on a table behind the cash register, emerging from a block of featureless wood, taking form in slow motion. And as she returned to her work, the spirit mirrored every motion of her wood knife and chisel, with each limb copied 4 times in a whirling blur. Had this random stray spirit imprinted on this woman? Was it trying to mimic her, trying to create art? Or was her skill and passion a gift from this unseen guardian angel? I'll never know. The world is full of strange things, unique things, phenomena which defy classification, which one passes by 100 times a day and does not know about. My struggles with the eye and our rivalry with Edward Lilburn did not define even a percentage of a fraction of what went on all over Sherrowford every day. Preem and Evelyn returned carrying a glossy little shopping bag from the underwear store, which even Rain knew better than to joke about. But Lozzie had no such qualms. "Can I see later?" she chirped to Preem, in total innocence. "Lozzie," I tutade gently. "It's private dash." "Not like that." Lozzie went wide-eyed at me, or at least as wide as her permanently sleepy ocular muscles could manage, and giggled in scandalized mirth. "You may," Preem intoned. We made our way back toward Swanbrook Mall, planning to try more stores. Despite a few successes, we still hadn't found anywhere for the real staples of sartorial choice. We passed by the alleyway that I knew led to Mountamay's second-hand books, and I yearned to spend the next 3 hours exploring the shelves. "I'll take you out here in a few weeks' time," Rain murmured to me as I cast a longing glance back over my shoulder. "A bookshop day, just for you." "Oh, I wasn't." "Wait, how? Did you know I was thinking that?" Rain winked, and slipped her free hand into mine. "If I didn't track your book lust, I wouldn't be a very good girlfriend to you, would I?" "Book lust?" I grimaced through a giggle. "Please don't call it that." I endured the same reaction to the all-too-spotless chain bookstore back inside the shopping center, but I was a good friend to Preem and did not derail our entire trip to spend half an hour gazing upon hardback copies of books I'd already read a dozen times. Rain did not let go of my hand. She'd spent most of the shopping trip up until that point with her head on a covert swivel, always in the rear of our little group despite her crutch, always eyes up and watching the periphery. She did it quietly, without making a fuss, but I knew she was watching to see if we were being followed. Once we got back inside the shopping center though, she finally began to relax, and I was the self-conscious one, my hand in hers in public. Nobody cared. Not about the pair of lesbians holding hands, or about Evelyn Say the magician, or about Lauren Lilburn out in public. We didn't look that different to any other group of students out on a Saturday. Walking sticks and crutches, Preem's impassive intensity in Lozzie's pastel poncho, my lingering bestial twitches and Rain's bodyguard aura, all of it combined to mark us out as very student, as Rain put it, but we wouldn't draw a second glance in the center of Sherrowford, a city that very much wanted to be what it thought we represented. We'd scouted out a few more likely shops, but kept coming up empty-handed, too bland, too expensive, too bloody middle class, as Rain phrased it, until we found her tellies and Preem had waded in without reservation. I would have hated this sort of trip by myself. Alienating and meaningless. The last time I was in the shopping center, I'd been stumbling along next to Amy Stack, on the way to a meeting with Alexander Lilburn. We did avoid the food court, if only to stay away from bad memories, and I was faintly sad that neither Zheng nor Tenny could join us. Too big, too scary, too different to be out in public. But I was with friends, and that bottled up the failure and the guilt. I felt unworthy of such a reprieve. "You want one of those too?" Evelyn murmured, pulling me off the path which led to dark thoughts. I blinked at her. I'm sorry. Preem had returned behind the thick privacy curtain of the changing cubicle, handed Lozzie the blue skirt and ribbed sweater, and was busy trying on another outfit, while we waited on the little low backless couch seats. I'd been idly drawing my hand across the thick fabric of the ribbed sweater. Lozzie was chattering something to Rain, and Evelyn had leaned in beside me. The jumper. Polo neck seems perhaps your kind of thing. She frowned over the words, as if not quite certain. Oh. I tried a smile, chasing away the ghost of guilt. Maybe. It certainly looks comfy, but I doubt I could pull off the look like Preem. I don't have as much, if you know what I mean. I felt my cheeks color slightly, but I retained my composure. That's not what I meant. I mean I'm not Dash. You could pull off any look you want, Rain added from my other side. Listen to your lover, Heather, Evelyn said. She wants you in that skirt. Stop double-teaming me, I protested. That one made Lozzie giggle. If you want one similar, Evelyn deadpanned, as if none of this mattered, oddly detached, I've still got £150 earmarked for you. What? My eyes went wide. Oh, Evie, no, not after you already bought the hoodie for me, I can't Dash. Yes you can, she almost snapped. I mean, the blue is too much for me Dash. Weren't they in white, too? Rain asked. Cream, or black, or lilac. Anything you like. I want a rainbow one, Lozzie added. With a hood. Different store for that, I'm afraid, Evelyn sighed, then much to my surprise she poked me in the side. Go pick one out. Go on. I glanced at Rain either for help or permission, I wasn't sure which, but she just winked at me and nodded over Evelyn's shoulder, toward the clothing racks beyond the fitting area. I can see them from right here. Go on, go grab one and come try it on. Oh, fine. I huffed and stood up. I'll be back in a moment. You'll look great. Rain called after me as I all but scurried out of the fitting area and back under the lights of the shop floor. I cast a backward glance at the young woman at the attendance counter, feeling like I was doing something wrong, but she didn't look up from her magazine. Rain hadn't exaggerated, the display shelving with the ribbed sweaters wasn't far from the fitting area, and I could see my friends unobstructed. Rain raised a thumbs up and gave me a broad wink, and I responded with a performative little huff before turning to focus on the clothes. These ribbed sweaters did feel very comfortable. Like a hug, warm and tight and thick. I doubted they'd look any good on scrawny little me. I didn't have Preem's plush layers to fill one out. But I picked one up anyway, in white. Not my usual sort of look, but maybe it would work, maybe it would be okay. I didn't deserve this. The feeling was sudden and crushing. I didn't deserve such good friends. I certainly didn't deserve presents or treats or fancy new clothes. I'd failed. Yesterday, I'd failed to find Edward Lilburn. I'd filled a bucket with sick and blood, overtopped it with pain, gotten precisely nowhere, and had to be rescued. I hadn't told anybody how close I'd come to the edge of the abyss, consumed by an awful sense of defeat. 7 Shades of Sunlight knew, but she hadn't appeared to offer help or advice. She'd ignored my pleas in the bathroom mirror last night. I shouldn't be here, having fun. I should be banging my head against the problem of the eye until either I cracked it or cracked my skull. We'd called Nicole's personal number and left a message, to let her know we were interested in employing her very particular skill set. That was, for the moment, all we could do. The best course of action, Evelyn had assured me. Safe. Detached. Without personal involvement. But surely I shouldn't be here, pretending to be normal. Why did you save me? I whispered under my breath, to the only person who knew what had happened out there on the edge of cold infinity. Can I help you find anything? The bright and cheery voice made me jump half in surprise, half in embarrassment. I turned with an expression like a startled squirrel, and found the young lady attendant from the desk standing a few feet behind me, all polite and proper, with a perfectly plastic customer service smile on her heart-shaped face, framed by a helmet of brown hair. "Oh, no, thank you," I rushed to reply. "I was just going to try this on." I trailed off, deeply unimpressed. There were two of her. The attendant was still sat at her little desk next to the fitting area, nose in her tacky magazine, dressed in white blouse and denim jacket and hoop earrings, and the exact same person was also standing in front of me, but wearing a smart one-piece dress, totally appropriate for a shop attendant in a slightly upmarket clothing store. A yellow dress, with matching yellow shoes, and little yellow sunflower earrings. There was a tiny percentage chance that this particular clothing shop just so happened to employ a pair of identical twins, and one of them had by chance decided to dress all in yellow, on the exact same day that we ended up here, and then, by the pure perverse mechanism of cosmic determinism, walked up to offer me help. This slim possibility sustained my veneer of normality for about a quarter of a second, until I realized the one in yellow had approached me from the exact angle to make the double twin impossible to miss. Perfect theatrical blocking. A professional at work. "Sevens," I hissed. "What are you doing?" I flicked a glance at my friends, but Preen was stepping out of the changing stall at that exact moment, and Rain had looked away. I had no doubt Sevens had timed that to perfection as well. The pretty young service worker in yellow batted her eyelashes at me. "I'm sorry, miss. I was only offering assistance, if there's anything I can help you find." "I'm very sorry if I've given offense somehow." "Oh my goodness, don't do that." I grimaced at her. "That is positively creepy." Her plastic smile slipped, tainted by simulated nerves. The banana-colored shop assistant had particularly mobile eyebrows, involuntarily raised in surprise. "See creepy," she stammered, glancing over her shoulder for help. "You haven't done something unnatural to that poor woman, have you?" I whispered, gesturing with my eyes at the lady she was copying, the one sat at the desk. "I haven't forgotten what you did to the students in that lecture hall, even if you did reverse the effects." "Don't you dare, Sevens, not here." The precariat in sunburst looked back at me, throat bobbing, hands clasped just a little too tight, sweat breaking out on her brow, the very picture of a put-upon service worker subjected to a unjustified berating by an unreasonable customer. For a horrified moment I came up short, my heart juddering to a stop as one of my worst fears threatened to unfold into reality. What if this wasn't Sevens? What if I was ranting nonsense at some uninvolved woman? Heather Morel, being openly insane and unstable in public. Everything I'd always been trained to avoid at all costs. All the blood drained from my face as the woman in the yellow dress struggled for the right words. Then, in the split second between two flustered blinks, the irises between her thick dark lashes flashed from deep brown to the yellow of an electric storm. "Sevens!" I hissed at her, almost spitting with outrage. "Don't make me feel like I'm abusing a service worker. That is disgusting." Sevens as part-timer cleared her throat and resumed her plastic smile. "I'm very sorry you feel that way, miss." "Heather." I flinched. I would have jumped, but Rain's voice was far too deeply ingrained as a source of safety and comfort and protection. She was at my shoulder, and I'd been so absorbed in telling off Sevens that I hadn't heard Rain approach, even with her crutch. She leaned on it now, peering at me with curious concern as she put her free hand gently on my forearm. Far behind her, back in the fitting area, Evelyn was casting an idle glance our way as well. "You okay?" Rain asked. I spun back to Sevens and found nobody there. "Heather?" Rain dropped her voice. "Hey, saw you talking to yourself, is this invisible monster stuff?" I screwed my eyes up and let out a deep sigh. No, just an irritant. It's gone now." Rain went tense, eyes roving beyond me, over the racks of clothes and neatly folded jumpers and hanging skirts. "Not another servitor," she whispered. I almost laughed. No. Nothing so clear as that. It was Sevens. Being infuriating. Rain relaxed instantly, and raised an eyebrow at me. What did she say? Nothing. She asked me if I wanted help finding clothes, bizarrely enough. Being a weirdo. Gotcha. Rain's mouth tilted into a knowing smile. Hey, you ever need help scaring off some invisible stalker, you let me know. I will do. I managed a little smile, and felt fake all over. Rain nodded down at the ribbed sweater I was still holding. Going for one in white, hey? Oh, yes. Well, I don't know, really. I do know. And I know you'd look great in that. Rain shot me a grin, the sort of heart-stopping rakish smile she'd used on me when we'd first met. It still worked. I don't tell you that often enough, she lowered her voice. You could wear anything you'd want and you'd look incredible. Don't be absurd. Rain. I'm flat as a board, this won't do anything for me. Nonsense. Hey, no, don't look away, she put the tiniest whip crack into her murmur, and I had to obey. I mean it, Heather. You want to try a different look, do it, I'm on board. 100%. I know you like lots of layers when you're out and about, but if you want to experiment at home, go for it. I swallowed and bit my lower lip, my brain caught up on too many different things to put up any resistance. I suppose I would like to wear skirts more often maybe. Yeah, that's more like it. Tell me what you want. Skirts, huh? I got you all those colored tights way back. Come on, hey, you in a ribbed sweater, a ruffly skirt and a pair of purple tights. Practically royalty. I laughed, despite myself. Rain, that sounds so silly. I don't know if I can pull off girly. Forget can, Rain. Focus on want. I sighed and shrugged. Go try that on, at least, she said. Oh, alright. Alright, I surrender. I'll try it on. As long as nobody laughs at me. You must promise. 3 minutes later I was behind the closed door of a changing cubicle, peeling myself out of my coat, alone with my reflection in the full-length mirror. I stared at myself for a long minute, in my shapeless hoodie and jeans. Abyssal dysphoria blurred my self-image. I'm just going to look silly in this, I muttered under my breath, and pulled my hoodie up over my head. You'll look wonderful if you let yourself believe, my own voice answered. I scrambled to get my hoodie off, freeing my vision in a tumble of hair, heart rate spiking, and discovered the me in the mirror had taken the liberty of a full-on top-to-bottom wardrobe transformation. Ribbed sweater sleek and neat and form-fitting in bubblegum pink, not white, highlighting curves in a way I didn't dare acknowledge I possessed, matched with a knee-length skirt made of at least 3 different layers of frilly, fluffy, lacy material, flouncing out from my slender hips in dark purple accented with black. My own slim legs emerged beneath, wrapped in white tights and terminating in a pair of pink trainers. 7 Shades of Heather pulled a nervous, flinching smile I recognized all too well, and did a little hip-jutting hands-out pose to show off the outfit. She slid one foot back and tapped the heel, and the sides of the pink trainer lit up briefly with LEDs buried beneath semi-transparent rubber. I just stared, open-mouthed. "Well," she said after a moment. "Don't just stare, say something, please." "I do not look like that," I managed. "I could never look like that. Those clothes are too lovely for me, I'd ruin them with vomit and blood. You've made me look pretty and I am not dash." "Heather, how many times?" The me in the mirror slipped into that know-it-all diction which made me cringe, sighing and dropping the cutesy pose. "I can only play your role, I can add nothing which you are not already fully prepared for. And you are fully prepared for light-up shoes, believe me, you are so ready for these." She tapped her heels again, and both shoes lit up in a flashing pattern of pink lights. "You've got highlights," I said, outrage racing to catch up with the shock. "I would never get highlights, don't be so silly." "Don't be so silly yourself," Seven Shades told me with my own voice, in my own faintly offended tone. One of my hands went to her fringe in the mirror, to the little blonde highlights in my hair. Rain would eat you alive. Not that she doesn't regularly do that already. Seven's Asmi flushed slightly and cleared her throat. Goodness, I was a horrible little oversexed goblin. I sighed. This is not the time for that, Sevens. It is exactly the time for that. For me. I don't have the emotional bandwidth for your games. Plays, sorry. I don't have the emotional bandwidth to even be here on this shopping trip. I certainly don't have the time to be dressing up like a novelty cake. I should be at home, focusing, trying again. And almost tumbling head first into the abyssal waters beyond reality, she asked with a disapproving press of her lips. Infuriating habit, and all mine. Thank you, I said, but with a little huff. For yesterday. For saving me. You are welcome, she said, with genuine grace and a little smile. At least I was polite. I thought you weren't supposed to interfere though, beyond putting on your plays. Natures are different in the deep abyss, Sevens told me. You know that. You're not the same when you're unexpressed in reality. Do you think the same differences don't apply to me? You think a play means anything in the dark? I don't wish to go there either. Oh. Okay, fair enough. I frowned. She had a point. Sevens was a thing of frills and light and the crumbly taste of fresh bread, she'd get eaten fast down there. I suppose you wouldn't last a minute in the abyss. Oh, I would last. I would just be very different. She split my face in a grin which looked nothing like me to reveal a double row of razor-sharp shark teeth in my mirrored mouth. Goodness, I breathed, flushing in the face with abyssal envy. That's more like it, yes. Sevens closed her abyssal maw again, and her teeth returned to normal. Besides, all I did was anchor you. She huffed, exactly like me getting exasperated. Because you still refuse to use the secrets of creation. I huffed too. That is the exact same thing you said before. Along with all your "I am only a question" nonsense. I waved a hand at her in the mirror, at her making me look pretty and well-dressed. What sort of question is this supposed to ask? You cannot address failure through sheer bullheadedness, she told me, with a tone like a schoolmistress, totally at odds with that playful outfit. Did I ever sound like that? I anchored you once, but I won't be able to do it again. Now that I've done it, now that you're aware, doing it again would cost me dearly. If you must sip from the cold depths, you must be anchored first. Anchored? How? I asked. I can't push brain math further without more I don't know. More power, more knowledge, more dash. Must I put on a play to communicate something so fundamental? Seven Shades gestured at herself, at me in the mirror. Not that you have to dress like this at all, actually. Both of them would gladly devote themselves to you even if you were dressed in rubbish bags from an open sewer. Both of them. I trailed off, throat closing up, heart rate climbing. I knew exactly what she was talking about. Your sister told you what to do, she said. Maisie told me to gather my friends. She didn't tell me to have a lesbian threesome. There we go. Seven sighed. I know you haven't accepted it, I know you need educating, and I will be producing quite the show for dash. You mean polyamory, I spat. Yes, I looked the word up, like Evelyn suggested. Were you watching that too? You're saying what exactly? That I'm supposed to emotionally anchor myself with Rain and Jing too? How is that supposed to work? Sevens pulled that smile, my own knowing smile, tight and twitchy, and I wanted to swear quite loudly at her. You'll figure it out, she said. It's not normal, I replied, vaguely aware that meant nothing. Nothing about you is normal, Heather. I sat down with a thump on the cubicle's tiny built-in wooden bench. This is absurd. I can't do that to either of them. I can't exploit them just to dash. Choosing family is not exploitation, Sevens told me with a little frown. Don't make me confront this. Please. Not now. I shook my head. I didn't even know polyamory was a thing until recently. Until 6 months ago, I'd never had a relationship. I barely know what I'm doing with Rain, I am not the person for this. But do you want it? Yes. I don't deserve it. I never expected to be attracted to somebody like Rain. Let alone Jing. I always thought my type was more well, like how Evie looks, I suppose. Soft and cuddly. Somebody I can build a pillow fort with. I felt myself on the verge of cracking, a pressure inside my chest. Yes dear, sapphic love comes in many forms, yours is not invalid. Besides, Rain is not jealous unless you tell her to be. Ha. Sevens as me lit up and also lit up her shoes again in a little double heel stomp. I stared at the me in the mirror. At me, dressed up and confident and shining inside. I noticed that Sevens had a sort of semi-transparent aura, a flickering and wavering halo of phantom tentacles, my tentacles made beautiful even in echo. I don't want my life to sound like the title of a vaguely offensive pornographic film, I huffed. Petite lesbian gets gangbanged by 2 bulldykes. Heather, said the other Heather, aghast and blushing. I blushed too. That was unfair and rude of me. Getting into a polyamorous relationship isn't going to solve anything, I whispered. It'll just create more problems. Big, complicated, emotional problems that I am not prepared to deal with. Ah, but they will be wonderfully fun problems. I gave her a death glare. The Heather in the mirror cleared her throat, looking suitably chastised. And I will help you make it work, Seven said. How could I possibly focus on that when a man I don't even know has stolen the means of rescuing my sister? Sapphic love is the means of rescuing your sister, and nobody can take that from you. Think about it, Heather. You refuse to see what is right in front of your eyes. But dash. Do you want it? She said, losing patience. Me, irritated. Do you want both of them? Knock knock came a gentle knock on the door. I jumped. Yes. Heathy, okay. Lozzie's voice called through the wood. Need help? I glanced back at the mirror. 7 shades of sunlight was gone. It was just me again, staring back in rumpled reflection. Yes, Lozzie, I murmured. Yes, oh, I do need help with this. I absolutely do. I can't believe I bought all these, I said, again. 6, Preem intoned softly, like the striking of a cloth-muffled bell. Technically speaking, you didn't buy anything, Evelyn said from beside me, punctuating her words with a clack of walking stick on concrete as we descended the pedestrian ramp in the multi-story car park. I did, and I'm allowed to do whatever I want. I do what I wayn't, Lozzie sang under her breath. But I still can't believe it, I repeated. I've never even really picked out my own clothes before. I don't feel like I'm allowed to. I can't believe these are mine. 7, 8, Preem continued. I really can't. 9. Rain was at the front of our little group, a few paces further ahead down the ramp. She pivoted on her crutch and walked backwards for 2 steps, pulling out a quick-draw finger gun and flicking her thumb down to shoot me through the heart. Believe it, cutie, she said. Our Rain. Self-conscious, embarrassed and enjoying it on a level I did not care to analyze right now, I choked out a giggle, or at least an awful little sound that passed for a giggle to my ears. I clutched the bag from her tellies tighter against my chest, as if an unseen hand might take it from me, or the cold wind passing through the open sides of the multi-story car park might pluck it from my arms. Rain shot me a wink, then stumbled ever so slightly as she pivoted forwards again. She hid the fumble well, suppressed the wince as she put too much sudden weight through her still healing left thigh. She turned the weakness into a rolling swagger step. But that didn't stop my heart from leaping into my throat and my feet from scurrying to catch up with her. Rain. Rain, please be careful, I saw that. Please. I loosened my grip on my bag of goodies and put one hand awkwardly on her side, in case she needed support, in case the unthinkable happened. She flashed a rakish grin down at me. "'S'all your fault, Heather. Wah dash. I've gone all week at the knees from the thought of your new getup." She nodded down at the bag with a twinkle in her eye. I tooted and blushed. If she'd used that husky, private, teasing tone with me in any other context, I would have melted like candle wax under a blowtorch. Inside, I squirmed with barely suppressed pleasure, but this was not appropriate, not when she was deploying the compliment as a shield. "Rain," I struggled to phrase a coherent sentence. "I do not appreciate dash." The deflection, "Yeah, sorry." She cleared her throat, not meeting my eyes but looking ahead to where the ramp opened out onto the car park floors. "I don't like to stumble, that's all. Thanks for being here." Of course, you're welcome, yes. Always." I hadn't expected an acknowledgement, let alone an apology, certainly not so quickly. Rain really had changed. "Still serious about the outfit though," she added in a faux casual tone. "Should need a license to be that spicy. You're gonna burn my tongue and present a choking hazard, if you know what I mean." I blushed harder this time, denied the bulwark of irritation. I stared down at my shoes for a couple of paces. "I still can't believe I did it." 10, Preem sang. Preem. I glanced back over my shoulder at Preem, who was carrying the majority of the other bags. "I'm sorry, Preem. What are you counting?" Preem locked eyes with me, and declined to answer. Evelyn snorted a single laugh. "She's keeping track of the number of times you've expressed disbelief at your own acquisitions." "Yes," Preem intoned. Oh, I'm sorry, Preem, I didn't mean to make this day about me dash." "Us," Preem interrupted. She didn't need to expand that point. I nodded and looked down, chastised by kindness. Of course, Preem couldn't possibly know how hard I was distracting myself right now. I would tie myself in knots over my new clothes to avoid thinking about what 7 shades of sunlight had revealed to me. "Day's not over yet," Rain said with rousing approval. "Gotta get you home and get you in that full outfit, hey?" "Don't be disgusting, Rain," Evelyn drawled. "All these new clothes are going in the laundry first." "You don't wear new things without first." "Well," Evelyn trailed off, her eyes lingering on the pink cat ears beanie which Lozzie was already wearing. "It's okay," Lozzie stage whispered. "I'm special." Evelyn cleared her throat. "Fair enough. Lozzie gets special dispensation, but you don't get to make Heather wear anything without washing it first." "Dunno if I can wait that long," Rain said, and flashed me a wink. I clutched the bag to my chest again, burning and self-conscious, and trying not to think about polyamory. The bag from her tellies, or rather, my bag from her tellies, in addition to the 2 Preem was carrying, along with the rest of our haul, contained some of the most lovely clothes I'd ever owned, not counting the incredible scale-patterned super dry hoodie which Evelyn had forcefully bought for me earlier in the day. Back in the clothing store, after Sevens had vanished from the mirror, I disappointed everybody by emerging still dressed exactly as I had entered. "Ah, Heather." Rain's face had fallen with sweet concern, misinterpreting my stricken state. "It's okay, it's cool. You don't fancy it anymore? We can try another thing if you like. Or just, hey, sit down and advise Preem, yeah." "No, I choked on my words, on the sight of Rain's face, on polyamory." "She's feein'," Lozzie stage whispered. "She's changing her mind flip ways." "Flip ways, yes," I gathered myself. "Oh, Lozzie, you were more accurate than you knew. Or maybe you did know. But this was neither the time nor the place." Sevens had one good point amid the madness: if I was going to do this, I may as well feel good about myself while breaking everything. So I'd screwed up my courage, marched right across the fitting area with Lozzie bouncing at my shoulder like a pixie companion, and spoken to the attendant at the little desk. And yes, as it turned out, they did have some less popular colors of ribbed sweater in the stock room. Old leftovers, stray returns, abandoned styles. Only this one, I'm afraid, no other sizes, the attendant had told me, and I'd had to remind myself forcefully that this pretty young woman was not 7 shades of sunlight right now. It's in small. Is that dash? Perfect, I'd breathed, on the verge of hyperventilating with sheer nerves and brittle courage. Thank you so much. Yes, I'll take it. Right away. I mean, I'll try it on. Thank you again. 1 polo neck ribbed sweater. Tight like a hug. Bubblegum pink. Rain's face had lit up like a carnival. The other components of Seven's sartorial suggestion were far less easy to source. Hartelli's didn't carry anything like the triple-layered skirt of frill and fluff and lace, it simply wasn't that kind of place. Preen finished up her wardrobe randomization session and carried an armful of clothes to the register, so Evelyn could pay, and I added my single sweater at her prompting. Are you certain you don't want to get a new skirt too? She'd asked me. Because I will spend that money on you eventually, one way or the other. No bullying, Preen intoned. The young man behind the cash register had stared at Preen's musical tone, but his eyes had quickly slid off her. Can we save it for now? I asked. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Oh. I'd like to look for something else, I said. Something specific. Probably on the internet. I shot a nervous glance at Rain, but she and Lozzie were checking out belts while we paid for the clothes. I'm going to assume I don't want to know, Evelyn said. Fair enough. Evelyn had paid. The figure made my eyes water. Preen received 2 large, smart, stylish bags stuffed with self-definition. How much have you spent today, in total, Evie? I asked. Never you mind. Retail. Therapy, Preen added. By the time we plunged back into the labyrinth of Swanbrook Mall, my burst dam of heart-juddering white-headed courage had run out into a confused jittery trickle. Felt like my head was going to melt. I'd actually bought the thing. Not the jumper which Rain had suggested, not the little personal experiment in style, but element 1 of 3 of Seven's absurdly girly version of me. Well, element 1 of 4. But I was not going to dye my hair. No thank you. Unlike Homo abyssus, I could achieve this in reality without putting my internal organs at risk. And it was a wonderful distraction. I drew the courage to buy girly clothes from a steadfast refusal to face what 7 shades of sunlight had told me. We scouted out a couple more shops in Swanbrook Mall, Topshop and Next, but Preen seemed satisfied with her selections from Hartelli's. I couldn't find anything that even approximated the beautiful skirt Sevens had been wearing, and we were all beginning to slow down. It was high time to drive home and have a big late lunch. I resigned myself to internet shopping, with all the accompanying self-consciousness of Rain inevitably peering over my shoulder. But then, as we decided to head back to the escalators, towards the suspended walkway which led to the multi-story car park, a vision in yellow led me astray. We were passing by one of the offshoot corridors, the sorts of wrong turns which terminated in public toilets or service doorways with staff-only signs, little artificial alleyways lined with stores which had resigned themselves to missing out on most of the mall's foot traffic, places that sold CBD oil or computer parts, with grimace-inducing names like Ye Old Christale Shop or Technics. And in the corner of my eye, a figure all in yellow, a voluptuous figure of pure feminine physicality, wrapped in flowing yellow satin and trailing scarves fluttering in unfelt wind, stepped into a store, and vanished. Heather. I'd stopped to stare down the artificial alleyway, along white plastic walls. Had I seen that, or hallucinated it? A spirit, a sort of slug thing made of raw organs, was inching along the ceiling, but it hadn't cast that bait, it didn't care. I leaned forward and tried to see what manner of shop Sevens was trying to make me notice. The name hung over the doorway in absurd faux calligraphy letters. Scorching subject. I murmured. What now, Sevens? Heather, woo. Rain waved a hand in my peripheral vision. Ground control to Space Cadet Morel. You okay? Sorry, I said, flustering a smile. The others had drawn to a curious halt a few paces onward, but Rain had come back for me. I got distracted by something. Rain followed my previous line of sight and lit up in recognition. Oh hey, I remember that brand. They're still around. Wow. Can we take a quick look? I asked, before I lost my nerve. Rain raised an eyebrow, faintly amused. Sure. She glanced back over her shoulder. Hey, Laz, you might like this one too. Come on. We ventured down the little corridor, past a shop that sold refurbished record players and a hole in the wall that I gathered used to contain a perfume store, until we stood in front of Scorching Subject, and I realized what it was. Oh. She wasn't wrong. Scorching Subject looked like a sun-baked corpse picked over by vultures and left for the flies. A sign in the window informed us that everything must go. Closing down sale, all items %75 off, but the sign itself looked at least 6 months old. Inside, a high ceiling lined with tacky spotlights picked out clothing racks and spinny turnstile displays, mostly empty now, populated by only the most repulsively silly belt buckles and a few garments a witch might wear to a secret woodland ritual. A single staff member sat bored and distracted at the register, no older than any of us, staring at his phone. At least he looked the part, with his dyed black hair slicked down over one eye and those huge intimidating hoop piercings in both earlobes. A wisp of yellow, the glint of sunlight on chalk, slipped around the corner of some clothing shelves. I sighed. Yeah, I know, right? Rain said, misreading my huff. Kinda sad. I like this stuff, it's got a place. Should have a place. Goth girls are cute. Yes, Preem agreed. Ugh, went Evelyn, wrinkling her nose. We, went Lozzie, going straight past us and into the store, beelining for a display full of absurd hats. Oh, really? Evelyn tooted. We should go in, I said. You serious? Rain asked me, genuinely surprised. You want something here? Right on, Heather, go for it. For Night Preem, I lied. Isn't that right, Preem? Night Preem, Preem replied. Night Preem. Evelyn enunciated so hard I thought she was going to do herself an injury. What is this, her goth alter ego? Preem, you haven't told me anything about this. But it was too late for Day Preem. I was already wandering into the store, pulling Rain in after me, following Seven's breadcrumbs. To my complete and total lack of surprise, I did not find a tall and shapely woman in yellow behind the depleted shelving, but instead a rather sad-looking series of rolling hanger racks full of gauzy tops, spooky t-shirts, and belts as wide as my arm. What am I supposed to see? I murmured under my breath. We looking for anything in particular? Rain asked, flicking through some of the t-shirts. Oh hey, you know who'd love these? Kimberly. Here, this one's got a dragon on it. And this one has a dragon and a wizard, score. Sort of just browsing. I trailed off, relaxed with a long, slow breath, and let my peripheral vision guide me to a small yellow tag poking out between two long black skirts. Tentatively, half expecting 7 shades of shop attendant to appear from a blind corner, I approached the skirts and parted them, in search of buried treasure. And there it was. Knee-length, made from 3 separate layers of frill and fluff and lace, in dark purple like boiling midnight skies, accented with void black. How this rare find had survived the carrion eaters, I had no idea. Tacky. Girly. Flouncy and silly and actually beautiful, everything I was not. I sighed again as I pulled it off the rack. Really, Sevens? I thought you were making the outfit up. The layers were like the flesh skirts of a jellyfish, frilled and ruffled and faintly toxic to the eye. The me of 6 months ago would have hated the thing, but to the me right then it was an object of desire, even though it embarrassed me to admit so. A faint echo of Abyssal aesthetics, the same as with the scale pattern hoodie Evelyn had so generously bought for me, the same in the colorful display of bubblegum pink sweater. For a heady moment I couldn't tell what I was doing. Was I distracting myself from thoughts of polyamory by forcing a confrontation with a totally different set of hang-ups? Or was I preparing for the plunge? Secretly, I felt like polyamory was for people with a few relationships under their belt. Extroverts. Party girls. Pretty people. But anything would be possible, with even a false echo of Abyssal aesthetics. Then I would be beautiful too. Hee, look at Thayet, said Rain, catching up with me and breaking into a grin. Where'd you find that? You brain math your way into a sixth sense for diamonds in the rough. In a manner of speaking. She caught the wistful conflict in my eyes, saw something was off. You don't like it? No, it's not my style, I said. It's terrible, too girly. It's more lousy than me. I will die on the spot the moment you see me in it. I'm going to buy it anyway. Yeah, rock on. Rain lit up, all for me. That's more like it. Thank you, yes. I shall endeavor to rock to my best. My Abyssal prosthetic skirt was not the only thing we purchased in the Goth clothing shop. Rain and I emerged from the skeletal racking and found that Lozzie had gotten stuck into the suitably Gothic selection of novelty hats. Somehow she had convinced or bullied or simply overpowered Evelyn into trying one on. Not a word, Evelyn deadpanned at us, from beneath the floppy brim of a midnight black witch's hat. Rain decided to buy the t-shirt she'd found for Kimberly, an extra-long dress-style affair in black, with a graphic on the front of 3 unicorns galloping across a moonlit moor. And to Evelyn's curious, sharp interest, Preem had picked up a small box of makeup. You want to try on black eyeliner, she asked Preem, and did a stellar job of controlling her own distaste. Preem only stared back, so the makeup joined our haul as well. Between the bubblegum pink sweater hidden in overflow stock and the triple-layered skirt tucked away in a forgotten corner of a store that should have gone out of business, I was beginning to suspect that Sevens wanted me to acquire the entire outfit here, today, right now. But this was my limit. I doubted there was anywhere in Sherrowford one could purchase trainers with LEDs in the soles. Light-up shoes, absolutely not, I whispered under my breath as we went up the escalator. Heather, sorry. Rain prompted, and squeezed my hand. Oh, nothing. The last-minute detour had put us far past time for lunch, and we'd already agreed to avoid the shopping center's food court, up on the top floor. The first and only time I'd been up there was to meet Alexander Lilburn in an out-of-business coffee shop, and none of us wished to ruin a perfectly nice day with memories of attempted kidnapping. So we made our way back along the route toward the multi-story car park, up to the rear of the shopping center's top floor, where fake marble and bright lights gave way to concrete walkway and grubby glass windows suspended 3 stories up over the roads below. The enclosed bridge connected Swanbrook Mall directly to a series of shallow sloping pedestrian walkways, which climbed the height of the multi-story car park, separated by automatic doors to keep the heat in. The multi-story itself was open to the fresh spring air, each floor ringed by chest-high concrete bulwark but not much else. My blush and Rain's teasing banter died away as we stepped through, among the thin trickle of other lunchtime shoppers. Don't know about you lot, Evelyn drawled, but the first thing I'm going to do when we get home is make lunch. I am making lunch, Preem said in her sing-song voice. You will make lunch, you mean, Evelyn said. Tense is important, I don't mean to dash, she cut herself off, and frowned at Preem as we descended the wide concrete ramp. Wait, no, you didn't just dash. I will make lunch, Preem intoned. Evelyn huffed. Lozzie giggled. I suppressed a smile. Outwitted by her daughter again. The car park floors themselves were dingy and grubby affairs compared to the false majesty of the shopping center, all roughly textured concrete in dirty gray, held up by thick support pillars amid a maze of pedestrian pathways, half-filled parking spaces, smelly puddles, and discarded wrappers. The open sides let in some natural light, but the center of each floor was dim with orange street lighting from little insets in the ceiling. Lozzie made a game of hopping and skipping ahead, over the walkway markers and crossings. I subconsciously pressed myself closer to Rain, as we crossed the tangled space toward her car parked on the far side. We were less than 20 feet from the car when Lozzie stopped. She froze mid-step and her head flicked around like a rodent sighting a snake. She quickly scurried back to me and grabbed my arm, pressing herself so close she almost tripped me. A small animal, looking for solidarity. Lozzie. It's okay, I know it's a bit grim in here but dash. Heather, she hissed tight and afraid. She was staring off to our left, at nothing. Ragged rows of parked cars. A few spirits lingered here and there, a dark shadow beneath a van with cartoonish red eyes, a stilt-legged insect walking upside down on the ceiling, a weird amalgamation of deer and bird covered in fractally splitting antler shapes as it flomped down a row of vehicles. Yo, what is it? Rain said, alert, switched on, all here all of a sudden at Lozzie's fearful tone. What's this? Evelyn prompted, following our collective line of sight. I don't know, I said. Lozzie, there's nothing dash. I know that man, Lozzie hissed. He was one of my brother's friends. Oh. A person. I'd expected a servitor or an assassin or a magic cloud of sleeping gas or seven shades dressed as a traffic warden, here to give us a comedy ticket, not a regular human being. The man Lozzie had recognized wasn't the slightest bit interested in us. A few rows over, just beyond earshot, he was talking on his mobile phone. With one hand on the top of his car and one foot planted on the rim of the open driver's side door, he had the distinct air of calling home to make sure he'd not forgotten anything on his shopping trip. Maybe in his early 30s at the oldest, he looked trim and fit, with artfully tousled hair and a few days of stubble, dressed in jeans and a Manchester United football shirt. Utterly unremarkable. Right, I see him, Rain dropped her voice, going very still. Lozzie, friend, is he one of dash? One of my brother's men. Lozzie nodded rapidly. A wave of undeniable instinct crashed through my nervous system. Phantom limbs shot out wide into a hunting pattern, tugging on support muscles by sheer psychosomatic suggestion. I felt my pupils dilate, my extremities tingle, my veins flood with adrenaline. My breath fluttered as muscles vibrated with the need to move fast, move now. My heart climbed into my throat and my vision narrowed to a tunnel and my thoughts went white-hot with predatory focus, and I very nearly pulled clear of both Rain and Lozzie to tear this man limb from limb. The urge was overwhelming and terrifying and made perfect sense and would have been a very bad idea to follow. If I'd given in and did as my body demanded, thrown myself at this unsuspecting ex-cultist like a berserker, I was unlikely to actually hurt him much. I was still just me, 5 foot nothing, with very little muscle. My options for removing threats were brain math, or tentacles via brain math, and those required a clear head, equations, and careful thinking. But instinct screamed. Parasite carrier. Disease bearer. Agent of the enemy. Kill it, screamed the cold survivalist logic of the abyss. I hiccuped. Whoa, Heather. Rain hissed, squeezing my hand. My palms had gone clammy, my back coated in cold sweat, and I was shuddering all over. Lozzie squeezed against my other side, somehow aware she needed to anchor me. If he was one of Alexander's men, Evelyn murmured, putting voice to the logic inside my body, that means he's either Edward's man now or he's an occultist who escaped before their defiant ritual. A hiss climbed up my throat. I wished with every fiber of my being that Jung was here. And, Evelyn carried on, that man does not look like an outsider-ridden tortured shell from here. Ape brain took a moment to catch up with abyssal logic. Oh, I breathed. Of course. Right. Right. I could barely think. The predatory instinct was similar to the hunting urge I'd felt when I'd stood alone with Zheng in the night, the pull to run and leap and bare my claws in the dark, but magnified 1,000 times, directed at a visible target. Even backing down now, I was shaking and panting. Heather, hey, you okay? Rain tried to catch my eye. Heather? She will be. Lozzie whispered. We should get to the car, I managed to hiss. He doesn't even know we're here. Evelyn frowned at me. You heard what I said, this cannot be a coincidence. You think Eddie Boy is stupid enough to tell his low-level thugs where to find him? Rain asked. What say we commit a mugging? No, Evelyn snapped. Maybe it is a coincidence. I squeaked. Not everything has to do with us. Maybe he was just shopping. And maybe it's a trap, Evelyn grumbled. Preem, do not even think about it. Nobody approach this man. We could find out, Rain said, low and soft and lethal, and slipped her free hand inside her leather jacket. But the ex-cultist chose that moment to end his phone call. I saw a little smile and an ironic shake of his head as he said goodbye to whoever was on the other end. Without looking up at us, he got into his car and shut the door. The engine purred to life a few seconds later, far too quickly for Rain to catch up with him and knock on the window, even without the handicap of her crutch. His car backed slowly and sensibly out of the parking space, then turned to leave. See? I hissed, then hiccuped so loudly it echoed off the concrete. Cold sweat broke over me and the hunting instinct finally began to ebb away, leaving me hollow and exhausted. It was just a coincidence, The car's route brought it alongside us, creeping along the narrow passageways of concrete and speed bumps and stop signs. My phantom limb still itched to grab the wheels, stop the car, pull the man out by the scruff of his neck and strangle him on the spot. And as the car passed us, the man turned to look, slowly, directly, filled with blind purpose. At me. Ragged dark bags ringed the haunted emptiness in his eyes. Gaunt cheeks, skin sallow with exhaustion, lips cracked and dry. His hands on the wheel showed nails bitten to the quick, cuticles gnawed raw and bleeding and scabbed. The veneer of normality was a thin and cracking shell on his placid expression. From a distance he had looked almost normal, but up close, even through the glass of the driver's side window, this was quite clearly a human being out on the lost reaches of sanity. And he had seen me. Abyssal instinct coiled up like gooseflesh in freezing air. My phantom limbs wrapped around me in a protective barrier. I had the sudden urge to run away. Eye contact lasted only half a second, and then the car was past us. Heather. Heather, what was that? What's wrong? Rain was asking, even as she fumbled her phone out, snapping a picture of the number plate. Heathy. Lozzie was squeezing me, her own fear forgotten as I struggled to keep my knees. Oh dear, Evelyn deadpanned. I was wrong, wasn't I? I nodded, numb all over. What? Rain asked, looking back from her phone screen and squeezing my shoulder. Look, I half want to tail him in the car, but I'm not leaving you here like this, Heather, you look like you've seen a ghost. That was an occultist, I whispered. One who escaped, before the rest defied it. And he knows who I am. We spent the rest of the day descending into curtain-twitching paranoia. The drive home was bad enough. Our good cheer was gone. Rain drove again, so at least she had to focus on the road, but her tension was plain to see every time her eyes flickered upward to check the rear-view mirror, expecting a car on our tail at any moment. Evelyn went quiet and intense, frowning into the middle distance as her mind chewed on possibilities and potentials and preventative measures. Preem sat still and straight-backed, her special day rather spoiled, but she didn't complain. Lozzie sat next to me in the back of the car, stroking my hair like I was a spooked hound, which was exactly how I felt. Our fashion show plans fell apart once we got home, before we even got in the front door, sacrificed on the altar of security. Rain spent a full 10 minutes standing in the garden gateway, propped up on her crutch, watching the end of the road. Half of me grew incandescent with worry, with the way she was suppressing pain behind protective intensity, while the other half of me wanted to scurry into her shadow and clutch the back of her jacket. He might wait. Waiting drew Zhang's curiosity, and eventually she ventured out under the thin spring skies. We told her what we'd seen. Lao Ye gropes blind in the dark, she purred, but its reach is long and wide. It was a coincidence, I repeated. Wide-eyed. Twitchy. I did not believe my own words. Zheng put a hand on my head, and I desperately wanted her to pick me up. There is no such thing as coincidence for gods, shaman. But none shall touch you. Well said, Rain added, staring at the end of the road. Lunch plans collapsed too. With the front door closed and locked and bolted, we fell apart in our separate frantic directions. Evelyn went to check the spider servitors, then clacked about from room to room, doing what she could to reinforce the ancient wards embedded in the walls and foundations of the house. Eventually she ended up in the kitchen, quiet with contemplation, drumming her fingers on the kitchen table and staring into the depths of an untouched cup of tea. Lozzie went upstairs to find Tenny. Rain gave me a hug, told me it was going to be okay, and then she could not stay still. She made endless circuits of the windows, staring out into the street, across the back garden, checking the latches and locks, popping painkillers without water. I loved her for that, but she needed to sit with me. Abyssal instinct told me to find the deepest, darkest, most secluded part of the house, and curl up in a protective ball until I was certain the vast predators out in the cold water had moved on. The instinct was out of place, of course, no different to the ape imperative to climb trees to escape danger. Instead I spent half an hour haunting Rain's shadow, embarrassed whenever she noticed me and waved me over for a hug, because it was never enough. Abyssal limbs tried to cling to her, but it was not enough. Nothing was enough. Edward Lilburn was a frightening adversary, but at least he was only a person. Our last brush with the eye had nearly killed us all. Zheng left the house, coat collar up, eyes narrowed to razor-sharp slits. I go to hunt, shaman. Laoya's slaves are clumsy. As she'd slipped out the back door, I tried to speak up, to say, please don't go, please stay with me. But the words had stuck in my throat. Rain had been within earshot. Pathetic Heather, this was the perfect moment to take the plunge, an excuse to ask for both of them to comfort me. Sevens was undoubtedly rolling her eyes in exasperation. Maybe that's why I couldn't. I didn't want it to be an excuse. It had to be real, and raw, and without reservation. Team effort rescued us eventually. Preem had retained more than enough emotional stability to stand in the kitchen and make a stack of sandwiches, and the first thing to break through my shell of nervous tension was a bite of peanut butter, forced upon me by Preem's insistent stare. Lozzie and Tenny appeared too, and Tenny innately recognized my tension and wound her tentacles around my shoulders and forearms. She stood half-guard with me, until Lozzie's gentle encouragement pulled us all back into the kitchen, our orbits reuniting at last. The lovely new clothes sat forgotten in their bags by the door, until Preem began the laborious process of running the washing machine multiple times. They're still around, then, I said, sitting at the table, halfway through a single chocolate cookie, the only thing I felt like forcing down. We always knew some might have survived, Evelyn answered, staring into her tea. In theory. Maybe he was the only one. Sure hope so, Rain said, leaning against the kitchen counter so she could glance out of the window. She caught the hollow look in my eyes, and shot a wink and a grin my way. I wouldn't wager on that, Evelyn mused out loud. A splinter faction. Anybody who rejected the rebellion against the Eye, left the house before they did their ritual. From everything we saw, Sarika and the others, anyone who survived this long with the Eye in their head must possess considerable psychological resilience. Which means it might just be this guy alone, Rain said. Right. Evelyn huffed and rolled her eyes. Keep up, Rain. He has to have a support network, I said, filling in Evelyn's gap. You don't survive something like that alone. I should know. He has others, people who understand. Exactly, Evelyn grumbled. Did you call Sarika? Yeah, Rain sighed. She didn't recognize the description of the guy. Said she's not been contacted or anything, but hey, can we trust her? On this, yes, I said. She'd scream so loud we'd know from here. My phantom limbs tried to curl up tighter. I wanted to vanish in a dark hole. Heath, Heath, Tenny trilled softly against my side. I wish Zheng would come home, I said, and felt Rain's eyes on me. Tenny didn't leave me alone the entire rest of the day. She made herself my security blanket, until she and Lazi passed me off to Rain at almost 11 o'clock at night, after 2 hours snuggled up with the pair of them in the warm safe dark in the core of the house. But I couldn't sleep. Even after Rain had finally relented and ceased her one-woman watch and turned to comforting me, rubbing my back in bed, being the big spoon in the dark, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't let myself. Every slide toward the edge was arrested, my mind scrambling back up toward tattered consciousness. Abyssal senses stayed stretched, listening for scratches at the utmost rim, for probing at our defenses. Or that's what I told myself. Really, I was listening for Zheng, waiting for her to come home. She would not slink back until the small hours of the morning. Maybe she would return with the severed head of the Eye's slave, or maybe she wouldn't, but I found it hard to care. I didn't want that. I wanted her. Abyssal instinct demanded her be close to me, and that was all that mattered. And I could not sleep until she was by my side, safe, and mine. Same as Rain. Bodily need clouds the meaning of time, especially deep in the night and deep in the bed covers, curled up tight and warm alongside another soft ape, so intimate and close that one forgets where one's own body ends and the other begins. So it was with Rain and I, that strange night of half-sleep and semi-listening, snatches of nightmare blurring into reality, and reality distorting into dreamlike nonsense. Her hand was down the front of my pajama bottoms when I woke up, but bizarrely there was nothing sexual about it when I realized the hand wasn't my own. Her hand was my hand. The phantom tentacle wrapped around her waist and backside was not mine, but hers. Our legs were tangled, her ankle between mine, and for a moment I couldn't tell which feet were which. Our breathing had synchronized in our sleep, and I tasted her on my lips without needing to kiss a dry mouth. But there was third body, a presence on the edge of my consciousness, like a weight pressing on me through several layers of clothing. Impossible to ignore, but not yet part of me. Zheng's home, I murmured into the dark. Rain made a sleepy noise behind me, and I did a tiny flinch. Hadn't realized she'd awoken along with me. Synchronicity, unspoken and instinctive. I took heart. Can feel it, I added, slurring. Her. We both slipped back down the steps of lighter slumber. Part of me wanted to leap out of bed and rush downstairs, but I held that feeling in both hands like a glass ball, and tried to examine it for flaws. A dream I dare not grasp too hard lest it shatter and fill my flesh with razor shards. Wanna go to her? Rain murmured. Not alone. What time is it? I asked. Rain rolled half over to check her phone on the bedside table. Her motion pulled open a small gap in the sheets, a chasm between us into which rushed a knife of cold air. Suddenly I could not abide that gap. That distance should not exist, should not be. Nearly 6, Rain slurred, heavy with sleep. Not bad, pretty good sleep for, hey, Heather. I squirmed around beneath the sheets until I was facing her, and closed the gap, burrowed in against her front, buried my face in her chest, pulled the sheets tight so no chill air could separate us. I allowed my phantom limbs to embrace her too, though she couldn't feel them. I felt like a very small animal, seeking warmth. Hey Cuddlebug, she said, voice reaching me from above the covers as she wrapped her arms around me. What's up? How's your leg? I asked. Aching. Sore. Better though. Will you take more painkillers this morning? You don't sound too happy about that. I'm not. Your body is mine too, you know that. I murmured, and only sleepiness gave me the courage. You're mine and I'm yours and we're each other and you have to look after yourself for me. You want me to stop taking the painkillers? She asked. Not necessarily. That's not the point. I'll dial them back, she said, dead serious and awake all of a sudden. Half dose this morning. A little laugh escaped her lips. This isn't the first time I've been hooked on painkillers, I know my way around the rodeo, but I'll prove it to you. I wiggled my head up, breached the heat of the covers and gasped in the open air, and met Rain's face, inches away in the dark. She smelled of sleep sweat, mine and hers both. Shadowed in the gloom, I caught her smile. You've been hooked on painkillers? I asked. Yeah. Back after I first met Evie, for a bit. Nothing major, just cocodamol for a few months. For a few months? Rain, you never told me that. She shrugged beneath the sheets. I needed it, at the time. I was homeless for a while, had some physical issues, you know. Of course, I'm not judging you, I never would just wow. I went quiet, shaking my head in surprise. Rain kissed my forehead and stroked my hair away from my face. Half dose, she repeated. I'll taper down. I screwed up my courage, before my mind woke all the way up, before a decade of being a good girl supplanted the blended purity of abyssal instinct and ape need. Rain, I said. Did you get around to playing the dice game with Sheng? Have you ever had a threesome? Despite the dark, I saw her blink, once. I thought my heart was going to dance right out of my chest. Then Rain laughed. Believe it or not, actually no, I haven't. Bit of a playgirl in the past, yeah, I deserve my rep, but I'm sort of a one-target-at-a-time type. There was this incident in the first term here at university, where I almost did, but I have trouble splitting my attention. Can't imagine you turning it down, I said, trying as hard as I could to keep my nerves out of my voice. But I couldn't conceal the sudden adrenaline burst, the shaking in my core. Hey, Heather. Rain squeezed me. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why you're asking this. It's not what you're assuming dash. If you want to dash. Please dash. With Sheng dash. Rain, stop dash. If you want a threesome, if it's for you, if it's what you really want, then I'm down, I'm game, she told me. No. I snapped. I pushed myself away from her and half sat up in bed, thrusting myself out into the chill morning air in the dark, my phantom limbs trailing after me as I felt my eyes blaze, my heart lurch then steady with something I had not realized until now. More certain than I'd ever been before, I stared down at Rain as she pushed herself up after me, half naked and glorious and not getting it at all. Heather. Hey, if I'm getting this wrong, tell me, I'm listening. If you want a dash. No, I said. No, Rain. We're not going to have a threesome with Sheng. It's cool, I'm cool with dash. Stop. We're not going to have sex with Sheng. We're going to play the dice and stories game with her. Rain blinked, surprised again. Okay. This has to be about more than sex. It has to be about what you want too. And Sheng. It has to be. I huffed, shaking inside, but I'd said it. Besides, I want to try on my new clothes, and I can hardly do that with both of you trying to get up my skirt. Between sleep inertia, trembling courage, white-hot embarrassment and a touch of mechanical unfamiliarity I took over an hour and a half to put on my new clothes. Probably some kind of record for dressing oneself in the morning. You can do this, it's going to be fine, Rain's going to love it, everyone's going to love it. You're going to be fine. I took a shower first. Alone, to cool my head and warm my body, muttering jumbled affirmations while I gave my legs a once-over with the safety razor. Halfway through it began to feel too much like a ritual cleansing, and I fought down a heady mixture of self-consciousness and ambient sexual anticipation. The heat soaked through my skin and bones, waking me up. As I drew closer to the moment I would have to step out of the shower, my nerves grew into an unstoppable heart flutter. So I turned the heat up and closed my eyes and stood under the stream of almost scalding water. Breathe. Breathe, Heather, breathe. It's fine. It's fine. Nobody is going to laugh at you. What are you even afraid of? Rejection? No. Rain loved me. Jing would do anything I asked. The new clothes waited neatly folded on the bathroom counter, bubblegum pink ribbed sweater, nebula purple triple-layered skirt, the beautiful pink scaled hoodie, and a pair of white tights that Rain had bought for me months ago. If Sevens was watching, and if she was, I was going to give her such a slap she must have been pleased as pudding to see me following her suggestion so closely. But she might not like what I was going to do with it. Before my shower, while Rain had dozed in bed after her promised half-dose of painkillers and a brief shared breakfast of toast and tea, I'd slipped downstairs in the slow-growing apricot dawn, to fetch my new clothes from the dryer in the little utility room, and to check on Zheng. She was asleep in her usual spot, in her baggy gray jumper and jeans, sprawled out across the broken-backed sofa like a tiger on a log. I couldn't spot any grisly trophies, and Zheng didn't smell of blood or meat, so I assumed her hunt had not borne fruit. To be fair, if she had found and killed the ex-cultist, I fully expected her to leave the severed head on the kitchen table, or bound upstairs to show me like a cat with a dead mouse. When I crouched down and eased the dryer open, Zheng purred behind me. Shaman. Zheng. Sorry, I was getting stuff. I didn't mean to wake you. She cracked open one razor-sharp eye and regarded me from beneath a heavy lid. Your heartbeat alone could wake me from death, Shaman, but you reek of fear and heat, both. Couldn't hide anything from Zheng, certainly not my physical state, not with her senses. I'd straightened up, arms full of clothes, and gathered my courage. I want you and Rain to play the dice and stories game today, I said, every word a guitar string tightened too far. With each other. Zheng stared, unmoving and unmoved, a tiger in the baking tropical sun, listening to a chimpanzee hoot and howl. Akarakish. I blinked rapidly, uncomprehending, heart in my throat. I was so nervous I'd lost command of my memories. What? I mean, I'm sorry. Pardon. Akarakish is the name of the game, Shaman. Zheng's mouth curled into a sleepy, toothy smile. And the Yashu best have stories to wager, or she will have to pledge other secrets. No violence. No hurting her. That is the exact opposite of what I want you two doing, I said quickly. If you can't play it without hurting her, tell me now. Please. Zheng's stare did not relent. Breakfast turned to lead in my belly. A small, animal part of me which still hadn't internalized Zheng's indebted devotion wanted very much to squeak apologies and scurry away, just to get out from under her languid predatory attention. But the rest of me, the hybrid combination of abyssal memory and ape instinct, felt her gaze as the warm kinship of a packmate. And she would not harm me. So I stood my ground. Don't give me the silent treatment, please, I managed to say. You want us to play nice, Shaman. Her smile turned sharp and unimpressed. HNNH. She won't insult you, I said, struggling with the complexity. I wasn't even showered and in my new clothes yet, and I was already negotiating the most treacherous broken emotional ground of my life. If she does, I will be there to tell her off and correct her. HNNH. I rolled my eyes, mostly at myself. Okay, fair enough, she won't insult you any more than her standard level of teasing for anybody. A bit of gentle ribbing is part of how she expresses friendship. And she's been making a real effort lately. And yes, I want you two to get along. I do. I think we should. I trailed off, narrowly resisting the urge to bury my burning face in the clothes I was carrying. Zheng's eyes snapped wide open, alert and dark in the orange light of the growing dawn. She uncoiled on the broken-backed sofa, staring at me like a big cat surprised to find a rodent had wandered close during sleep. She arched her back, flexing bunched muscles, showing off her Olympian curves, tilting her head up to present an expanse of bare throat but paused halfway, as if unable to believe what she had scented. Raw physicality pulled me to climb into her lap, snuggle in close, bathe in her heat and scent. This was, to put it lightly, quite arousing. But I clamped down. I told myself no, and I meant it. I swallowed, took a long shuddering breath, and Jing somehow sensed the iron-fisted control over my own sexual drive. "Do not torment me," she rumbled. "Mean it, or dash. This is not about sex." Zheng paused, cold skepticism on her face. She leaned forward and opened her mouth and unrolled 12 inches of wet red tongue, then snapped it back between her teeth again. "You're in rut, shaman. I can smell you." I blushed bright red. "Well, thank you for that. All right then. And you have made a decision." I huffed a huge sigh, powered more by nerves and embarrassment than exasperation. "It's not my decision to make, dash. I am yours, and I am still here. Ask. Ask and dash. Not my decision," I repeated. "It's your decision. And Rain's decision. And I can't think about it right now, and it's not the decision you're thinking of anyway, and dash. We are your hands, shaman. And you are in rut. Use me as you dash." Zheng blinked once then broke into a laugh, a big rolling chuckle that made her hunch forward, raise her eyebrows, and shrug at me. "I'm serious," I squeaked. "You are, shaman. I do not mock you, I laugh at myself. This is why I follow you." "Very well." She folded herself back onto the sofa again, coiling up like a great serpent hidden in the roots of the house. She rolled her neck and cracked her jaw and wiggled her toes, getting comfortable before she closed her eyes again, and fell still. "So you'll play the game Akarakish with Rain?" I asked. "I will. But I will not play nicely with the Yashu." I sighed. What had I missed? What had I misunderstood? "Zheng, I can't have you two hurt each other. I will be myself, shaman." And I swore an oath not to fight her. I will not break that. Ah. Well. Fair enough. Okay. I managed a nod, cheeks burning as I came down from my burst of courage. We were actually going to do this. It was happening. I'm going to go shower and dress. Yes. So, later, okay? But not too much later today or I'll lose my nerve. If you understand. I hope you understand. Zheng purred. I gestured with arms full of clothes, but Zheng seemed already asleep again. I'd backed out of the utility room and scampered across the kitchen like a child running to bed after switching off a hallway light, pursued by imaginary monsters in the sudden dark, by the notion that Zheng might lurch from the old sofa and sweep me up in a skin-hot hug and I'd melt in her embrace. But she didn't, and I'd escaped my own libido with my intentions intact. Taking the clothes into the bathroom was a masterstroke of self-deception. I only realized once I was standing there half-wrapped in a towel, covered in goosebumps, wreathed in the collected steam from the shower's heat, and staring at the little pile of colorful clothes which commanded my attention with all the seductive succulence of a carnivorous jungle plant. Getting dressed in here gave me time and space. Rain would happily have vacated the bedroom to let me get dressed in privacy or even more happily watched me, but then it would be an event, she would be waiting for me, the pressure would burst my heart and I'd have seized any opening to retreat, any excuse to back down, to put this off until tomorrow, or the day after, or next weekend, or never. But like this? My pajamas were already in the laundry hamper. Dragging them back on would waste the freshly showered feeling. I had left myself only one choice. I spent too long drying my hair, then hung up my towel with shaking hands, heart juddering in my chest and throat. You are allowed to wear these, I hissed to myself. Evelyn spent money on them, for you. For pity's sake, fighting giant spirit monsters didn't leave you this shaken. Get dressed. Easier said than done. Getting dressed had never before proven so complicated. My hands shook through the entire process, and I'm pretty certain I stopped breathing at one point. I'd worn tights before, of course, but always with the intention of looking as smart as possible, donning standard femininity like a suit of anonymous armor. The last time I'd done so was when I'd passed myself off as Kimberly's girlfriend at the Wiccan Coven meeting, and I'd had no time to appreciate how I looked then, no focus to spare on the aesthetics of my own body. But now I slid the clean nylon up my legs, settled it smooth and snug and tight, and my heart caught in my throat as I turned my attention down at my own legs, wrapped in thick and warm 140 denier white. Not terrible, I suppose. Compact. Slender. Concentrate, I hissed. I barely recalled putting on my underwear, let alone tugging the triple-layered skirt around my waist or wriggling into the plush pink-ribbed sweater. The whole thing was a blur of shaking hands and catching breath, and before I knew it I was staring at myself in the mirror, wide-eyed and flushed and numb. Oh, I breathed. Couldn't think. On a detached, technical, mechanical level, the outfit fit together surprisingly well. The white tights and bubblegum pink balanced each other out, soft bookends to the ostentatious dark skirt, flaring out from my hips in exuberant display of dusky purple frilled layers. I had to give Sevens that. Whatever showy aesthetic tastes she'd catalyzed in me, she had a good eye for symmetry and proportion. On the other hand, I look so silly, I whispered, cringing at myself. Lump in my throat, water in my eyes, chest tight with the need to retreat. Confronting this was too much. My hands twitched toward the skirt to yank it down, but I quickly grabbed the hairbrush from the bathroom counter and began dragging it through my hair, focusing on my face and taking deep, shuddering breaths. Have to brush your hair, I whispered to myself. Can't go back out there with messy hair too. It's gotten longer now, so you have to take care. Take care. Take care of your hair. Hair care, take care. Oh dear. Eventually, with great effort, I looked myself up and down again. I turned slightly to the left and right, pivoting on the balls of my feet, and the triple layers of the dark skirt moved like diaphanous membranes floating in ocean waters, brushing my thighs and knees as I moved. A joyous display in the dark. The bubblegum pink-ribbed sweater was thick and soft, a supple membrane over my vulnerable tissues, but bright and showy, not covert camouflage. Between the top and the tights I felt almost sleek, as if I was ready to slip through undersea currents with a flick of my feet. My phantom limbs rose in acknowledgement, at rest, content. In the abyss I had been a thing of pure survival, of toxins and sharp teeth and raking claws, of corded muscle and speed and stealth. When I had seen 7 shades of sunlight through abyssal senses, she had been revealed as beautiful, as a thing of vast display and aesthetic power, and I hadn't understood. Now I did, in the tiniest way. A few stray tears rolled down my cheeks. I wiped them with the back of my hand, not wanting to stain my new clothes. Euphoric joy was too much. I stood there a while longer, trying out different expressions in the mirror, different poses, experimenting to see what felt silly and what felt right, making my skirt swish and tilting my chin up, but in the end it all defaulted back to me. This was just me, and I could be this if I wanted. I didn't need to become somebody else to wear clothes that affirmed what I really was. I felt almost powerful. What I still didn't feel was particularly pretty. It was, in the end, just me, and that was a double-edged sword. I wasn't wearing makeup and wasn't about to start, that held no affirming power for me. I finally picked up the pink scaled hoodie and draped it over my shoulders like a layer of semi-shed snake skin, framing my chest and belly, and narrowly resisted the urge to drag it on properly and zip it up just to hide the shape of my own body. I felt more right than I had before, but it was still only little old me, scrawny 5'0" Heather. But maybe scrawny 5'0" Heather is okay. I asked myself in the mirror. My reflection smiled at me, warm and encouraging. Exactly, she said. Don't spoil this now, Sevens, I blazed at her, surprised at the sudden heat of my anger. You keep out of this. This is mine. Go away. My reflection's expression snapped back to my own. I spent a few moments frowning at myself, watching for an uncharacteristic twinkle in my eyes or a floating halo of yellow about my head, but 7 shades of sunlight stayed firmly buggered off. The nervous heart shudder flooded back when it came time to leave the bathroom. I lingered by the doorway, taking my time with the final, improvised element of the outfit, a pair of fluffy boot slippers borrowed from Kimberly. Usually I wore thick socks around the house, sometimes more than one pair, and it hadn't taken me much time standing on the bathroom floor in only tights to realize Rain had not been speaking in metaphor when she said I might get cold feet. No matter how sleek and smooth and pretty the white tights were, they were very thin compared to a good pair of thermal socks, so I snuggled my feet into the welcoming warm fuzz of the slippers. Just don't give them back to me smelling of zheng, okay? Kimberly had asked. We're not going to get physical, I'd said. Okay. Okay then. Kimberly had nodded and smiled and not believed a word of that. But I was determined not to mess this up. At the last moment before I screwed up my courage, with my hand on the bathroom door handle, I felt a final pang of guilt. Here I was dressing up, preparing to embark on the first uncharted step of creating an absolute drama nightmare of a 3-way relationship that might not even work. And Maisie was still out there in the cold and the dark, imprisoned by the eye, alone. But Sevens was right. She was right about anchors. Not about everything she could shove off with her insinuations I needed to have a threesome. Sex would be no anchor alone. Sex to the exclusion of love, well, there was nothing wrong with that. But it wouldn't make me secure. When I'd been out there slipping down the edge of the abyss like a foolish diver sucked into a marine trench by an undertow, I had needed an anchor. Somebody to hold my ankles and around my waist so I could lower myself over the edge. Sevens had pulled me up, but she was a half-abyssal thing herself, a creature that understood the logic, the deep, and the math which described it all. When I'd dived willingly into the black waters beneath creation, I'd taken the memory of my friends and their names and their smells and touch and our home together in a pressurized bubble in my core, but even that had served only as guide and curious comfort, not an airline to the surface. Diving bell, bathysphere, airline, anchor. I had to build something, and I only had certain materials to hand. Self, math, those who loved me. I wasn't deluding myself. I had zero idea what I was doing, let alone how I could feed any of this into brain math, but Seven's suggestion was better than anything else I had so far. And I did know the first step was to get Rain and Jing talking. Please don't end in a fight, I prayed, and opened the bathroom door. Rain and Lozzie and Tenny were all waiting for me. Thankfully they weren't lined up in the hallway like the audience at a catwalk. If they had done that, I might have slammed the door shut and hidden inside and needed coaxing back out with books and chocolate. Instead I took a couple of nervous steps out into the crooked upstairs hallway, with the thin light of a northern spring creeping in through the window, and found it much the same as always, not transformed into an alienating environment in response to me simply wearing a few different clothes. Heathy. Lozzie said, making me jump, half leaning out of her own bedroom doorway. She must have been listening and waiting for me. Oh, Loz dash. My eyes went wide and I almost choked up, but Lozzie bounced and bounded down the hallway in a few quick steps, a whirling pastel tornado, her own version of abyssal display, and threw her arms around me for a very quick, very nuzzly hug, and then just as quickly drew back with a playful elfin giggle on her lips. You look great. Yeah. You did it. I thought I was going to have to come into the bathroom with you and help and make you comfy and stuff, but you did, and it looks so good. It's really you, it's your style if you want it to be, and I like it, and aw, I kinda wanna borrow the skirt already, but it's yours, give me like 6 months. She giggled again, a rapid-fire stream of overwhelming positivity. Thank you, Lozzie. Yes, it's difficult. Thank you. Tenny drifted out of the bedroom behind her and wandered closer. Silken black tentacles crept forward to gently investigate the frilled hem of the triple-layered skirt and the texture of my tights. Her face was so serious, blinking with curiosity as she peered into my eyes. Heath, she trilled. It was very much a question. Yes, Tenny, it's just me. I put a new outfit on. You've seen me in different clothes before. Tenny. In a moment of mounting awkwardness, Tenny just blinked her massive oil-dark eyes at me, as if she wasn't sure who I was, but then she broke into a big smile, an extra-level smile, a Tenny has been copying Lozzie's smile. She read my nervousness and my scent, and bobbed her head from side to side as if I was being the silly one. And then she patted me on the head with one tentacle. Silly Heath, she said, and made a trilling pbbbbbt sound. I laughed, nerves releasing in a flutter of embarrassment, all flushed in the face. Of course, Tenny. Sorry. I am so self-conscious right now, I can't think, I dash. Rain's voice made me jump and twirl to find her in the corridor behind me, leaning on her crutch, like I was a marine scavenger surprised by the sub-vocalization of a shark. She must have been waiting in our bedroom, resting her leg, and gotten up at the sound of our voices. She looked me up and down with the biggest smile on her face, and the smile was all encouragement and warmth, her burning confidence lighting me up brighter than the sun. Rain, I squeaked, vibrating so hard I thought I was going to pass out. How do I look? I blushed hot enough to cook an egg. Lozzie snorted and hid behind both hands. Even Tenny made a fluttery FFFFFFTTTT noise. Rain, I tried to scold, but it came out as a pleading whine that made Lozzie attempt to put a whole fist into her own mouth. You look like the sort of goddess revealed in an LSD trip to heaven, Rain carried on. You are every dream I've ever had, and all the others I didn't know I wanted. You look brilliant. Look at you. You're pulling it off, I knew you could. Rain stepped in close, and for a moment I thought she was going to do something incredibly sexual, not only inappropriate because Tenny was right there, but because we talked about this earlier, about how this was not going to be about sex, not today, not until after the game at the absolute least, that I couldn't let it be about sex. But I knew that if she slipped a hand up my thigh beneath that triple-layered skirt or slid her fingers across my stomach underneath the ribbed sweater, all my resolution would crumble and my new clothes would shortly be forming a crumpled pile at the foot of our bed. But she kissed me on the forehead, winked, and leaned back again. You look amazing. See? You can wear whatever you want. I waited, wide-eyed, vibrating, for the other shoe to drop. For Rain to lean back in and whisper something in my ear that I couldn't resist. Heather. Hey, Heather, breathe, yeah. You look good, for real, I'm not just humoring you. 100%. But she didn't do it. She respected the request. I blew out a long breath and nodded, shaking and numb but coming back together. Thank you, of course I know you're telling the truth. Thank you, Rain. Thank you. Oh, goodness, I'm so self-conscious, I am not sure I can deal with everyone seeing me right now. Then you're in luck. Rain shot a finger gun at me. Evie's at campus for a couple of hours. My heart juddered in an entirely different direction. What? Why? Alone? Not alone. Lozzie chirped. Why now though? What's she doing? Going to class? Rain smirked. It's Monday. Oh. Oh, of course. Silly me, yes. I squeezed my eyes shut and shook my head, feeling stupid for a moment. Sometimes it's easy to forget magic isn't her entire life. Rain pulled a knowing smile. She barely needs classes anyway. Probably just wants to jabber in Greek for an hour to clear her head. Anyway, she and Preem are out, Kim's at work, Lozzie's going to. Rain raised her eyebrows and peered past me, with gentle encouragement in her eyes. Play video games. Lozzie said, arms in the air. Vid gam, Tenny purred. I've lent them my old GameCube, Rain said to me with a wink. Tenny's gonna learn about Pikmin and maybe Luigi's Mansion, if she can handle the spooky. Handle spooky, Tenny trilled, insistent and defiant. I have no idea what any of that means, I said. But that's very sweet of you, Rain. 10 here here, Lozzie murmured behind me, taking Tenny by the tentacles and doing a little dance with her. Before I could draw in another shaky breath or ask what exactly Pikmin were, a kind of Pokemon. Rain offered me her free hand with a little flourish, a twinkle in her eye, and a rakish tilt to her grin. May I have the honor of accompanying you downstairs to join the third point of our triangle, Lady Morel? I'd automatically put my hand in hers before processing what she actually said, and almost recoiled with distaste. Rain! Don't you call me that, that's weird. She burst out laughing. Sure thing, Heather. And yes, let's go fetch Zheng before I completely lose my nerve, please, yes. Lead on. Last I saw she put her feet up in the kitchen, the moment Preem was out the door. Rain held my hand high as she led me down the stairs, somehow graceful and smooth even with her crutch thumping on every step as we descended, but I didn't have the spare mental capacity to tell her off for presenting me like we were entering a ballroom. I was far too conscious of the way my skirt looked, the way it made me move, the way it felt against my legs, and the way the scaled pink hoodie over my shoulders hung off me like a cloak. By the time we were at the kitchen door, my heart was fluttering at full speed again, my stomach a hollow void. And here she is. Rain announced. Our Lady of the Hour. Zheng was indeed sitting with her feet up in the kitchen, wide awake, quiet and brooding like a tiger contemplating the coming hunt, waiting for us with a razor-edged grin playing across her lips. Shaman, she roared, clacked down the chair she'd been balancing on 2 legs, and stood up, stretching to her full height. Hi. Zheng. Yes. I got changed. Zheng had changed as well. She'd swapped out her baggy gray jumper for a second, identical but cleaner baggy gray jumper, which still did very little to conceal her sheer size. I breathed a silent sigh of relief at that. The fresh clothes were a sign she was taking this seriously. The shaman transforms, she purred. Yeah, no kidding, Rain agreed, with great enthusiasm. I'd hardly go that far, I protested in a stage whisper. A bear's pelt gives strength, a wolf's head mask bestows stealth, and crow feathers can be sewn into a cloak so even monkeys can fly, Zheng said. As long as respect is given to the bear and the wolf and the crow. Do you respect what you are, shaman? I stared at her. Yes, I breathed. Though I'm not sure I follow. You do. Even if you do not know. This is an awful lot of fuss over a fancy skirt, I tooted, self-conscious and blushing. You could just say I look nice and be done with it. You look nice, she rumbled. Thank you. So, big girl, Rain said. Apparently you and I are going head-to-head today, and neither of us have a choice. You always have a choice, I muttered. That's the entire point of this. Rain gave me the most affectionately ironic smile. Neither of us has a choice when it comes to you, Heather. I go where the shaman goes, Zheng purred. I huffed and rolled my eyes, feeling a little like a child throwing a tantrum in my party clothes, but my phantom limbs twitched and weaved through the air, and the shape of my skirt reminded me of what I was. Fine, I said, with a second huff and a sharp look at the other 2 corners of my presumptive triangle. Then I command both of you to tell me right now if you don't want to do this. And tell the truth. Rain shrugged. I'm game. I'll also win. She winked at Zheng. Hope you're ready for a whoopin'. Zheng grinned like a shark on the scent of a wounded seal. I go where the shaman goes. You have guts, Yashu, and I will feast on them. Metaphorically, I said, a little too hard. Metaphorically, Zheng allowed. A3. And a 1 and another 1, oof. Rain winced as the dice rolled to a stop in the tray. My loss, yeah. Zheng leaned back in her armchair. You learn quick, Yashu. And you lose. All well, can't win, all. Rain grinned and leaned back as well, sprawled on the desk chair a few feet from the foot of the bed. You had courage, Zheng purred. You held your ground. Anything less would be certain defeat. But chance was not with you. No warrior can control the weather. Rain shot a lazy finger gun at Zheng. You keep making excuses for that first round. You want me to believe it was just beginner's luck, but I surprised you, big girl. I'll have you zeroed in soon enough. Perhaps. First, you owe a tale. Hiya, that I do. Rain nodded slowly as she looked over at me. I'd made a sort of pillow throw nest perch at the head of the bed, in pride of place. I felt her eyes on me, and fought down a rather enjoyable blush. You do. I said, already enthralled by the last half hour. It's your turn, Rain. Please. Yes, Zheng purred. You must satisfy me, and are judge of truth. True that, Rain mused, adjusting her sitting position, drawing one leg up to place a foot against the end of the bed. Did you not come prepared, Yashu? Zheng purred, with a hidden mocking edge to her tone. Rain gave her a mild eyebrow quirk. I've got loads of stories, just all my most interesting ones aren't really mine to tell, they belong to Evie. All the ones with violence, magic, and plenty of blood. All the ones that meant so much. But hey, I guess Heather knows most of those already. If we're going to calibrate her truth-telling, I best start with one she doesn't know. Right? Zheng purred. Gotta warn you though, big girl, I'm no globe-trotting ancient like you, or baby-killing murderer like Stack. I've got some heavy ones in my quiver, some real life in there, but nothing epic, nothing soaring. My stories might bore you a bit. Then tell them well. We won't be bored, Rain. Really? I added. I absolutely will not be, I can promise you that. Alright then. A mischievous twinkle entered Rain's eyes. Let's start with something light. I'll tell you about the time I became the devil. I could barely contain my excitement. We were gathered in our bedroom. Well, my bedroom, Rain's bedroom. Anything more than that was yet to be discussed. Zheng lounged in an old armchair, while Rain sat on the spinny desk chair, legs alternately up on the end of the bed or the desk itself or just oscillating herself back and forth as she thought or spoke or watched Zheng roll the dice. She moved her injured leg slower than she would have in the past, but her range of motion wasn't too constricted. I was quite comfy, installed at the head of the bed, both audience and observed. I burned with self-consciousness in my nice clothes, especially with the way both Rain and Zheng would switch from focusing on each other to running appreciative glances over me, or was that my imagination, were they just looking at me like normal? But the promise of good stories kept me from burying myself in embarrassment. We'd commandeered a tray from the kitchen on which to roll the opposing sets of dice, which now stood on the foot of the bed between Zheng and Rain, close enough for either of them to toy with the dice between rolls. As we'd been getting seated and situated, but before Zheng had explained it to me, at least mind-boggling rules of holding and raising and betting your hand, Rain had dug around in her possessions and presented Zheng with a set of very odd dice with lots of sides. They were very colorful, some were even little rainbows, or variations on rainbows. I'd never seen anything like them before. Dice can have more than 6 sides? I'd asked, staring in fascination. Wait, hold up, Rain said with a grin. Heather, you've never seen a D20 before? I shook my head, dumbfounded. Rain had kissed me on the cheek in sheer amused delight. Zheng had declined the opportunity to integrate the special dice into the game, and for that I was exceptionally glad, no matter how pretty they were. The maths of walls and scaling and little gods was difficult enough for me to follow without adding extra improvisation with entirely new sets of numbers. Rain's special rainbow dice were mine to play with now, and I rolled them idly in my lap as I listened. I felt like a deep-sea mollusk, flushed and colorful with protective toxic display, perched on coral close to the surface to warm myself by the light of twin suns, showing off my frills and pigments, toying with pieces of smooth stone. I felt content and safe and home. And fascinated. I'd purposefully chosen to bring us all upstairs into the bedroom in order to invite Jing inside, into this intimate space, and Rain had accepted the gesture without question. But secretly even I wasn't quite sure what I'd meant by it. Bedrooms had never been nice places for me, not since Maisie was taken away. My childhood bedroom was forever marred by an open wound that only I knew about, a constant reminder of loss, and my short-lived bedroom for the first couple of months at university had turned into a torture chamber of eye-sent nightmares and sleep deprivation, forever stinking of fierce sweat and vomit. But the room I shared with Rain at number 12, Barnslow Drive, was different. Nestled in the heart of this strangely solid old house, large with a high ceiling and plenty of space for a double bed, desk, armchairs, television and Rain's video game consoles, not to mention my endless little piles of books, it felt more like part of a continuous warren up here in the top of the house, comfortable and known, and ours. Zheng had incredibly lost the first round of Akarakish to Rain. In a game of wit and guts and holding one's nerve, Rain excelled at pushing the limit and pushing her luck. She'd raised and raised and raised until Zheng had finally shown a speck of doubt and rolled one too many dice, and lost. They'd stared each other down, two massive cats sizing up claw and muscle and territory. But then Zheng had roared with laughter, slapped the arm of the chair so hard I was afraid she might snap the underlying wood, and declared Rain's victory a fair one. If rash. So Zheng had gone first. She'd told us a story about a man she'd known in the armies of the Khans, an important warrior who had wanted Zheng dead not for being unnatural or eating through enough horse meat to supply 10 men for weeks, or even for insulting him by urinating on his tent, but simply because she was strong and he thought himself strongest. He had owned a magic sword. It was a short and bloody tale, almost a fable, which ended with her blunting the man's supposed magic sword on her forearms and beating him to death with the pommel. She told it with a dark smile and a lizard-like fixation on Rain, and I did not like the thematic undertones. But she looked at me at the end, for approval. Truth, shaman, she purred. I am telling truth. Oh, I'd hesitated, fascinated and disgusted at the violence, but mostly worried by the unsubtle message she'd sent. It seems truthful to me, though it was a bit fable-like, with the ending and all. Almost too convenient. Hey, I liked it, Rain said, grinning. Did she miss the message or was she being polite? Real hack and slash. Zheng had stared at me for a moment longer, and I'd held her gaze, and then she'd split into a wide grin, showing all her teeth. Shaman. I cannot deceive you. The tale is true, but the ending is a lie. Oh. I blinked. Jurgadai did bury his sword in my left arm, but I didn't beat him to death afterwards. I ran off with the sword. She barked with laughter. All over the camp, out onto the steppe, and back again. He rode after me, puffing and shouting, but I am faster than any horse. Every one of his friends and fellows was roaring with laughter at his folly. I dropped the sword at his wife's feet. She was laughing too. And so Zheng had scooped up the dice again, plus 2 more she had to roll as a handicap for her lie. I had a funny feeling she'd fully expected me to pick up on that one, but I wasn't sure what to make of her intentions now. But she'd won that next round, and here we were. So, Rain began her story, kicking her feet up on the end of the bed and leaning back on her hands. My parents were very religious. Real serious God-botherer types. Zheng purred, eyes narrowed. I perked up at the prospect of anything from Rain's childhood, as welcome as gold dust. Heather knows a bit of this already, but the context's for you. Rain nodded to Zheng. Not nice cuddly modern COE types either, or even regular Catholics she broke off with a raised eyebrow. Excuse me, Zheng, I've just realized, you're gonna need a tiny bit of Christian theology for this one to make sense. Do you? I spent a century in the deep cellars of a monastery in the Carpathians, Zheng said. The monks assumed I was a fallen thing. Tried to make me repent the sin of rebellion. I have heard the Christian book front to back thousands of times. Rain winced. Ouch. My condolences. Anyway, okay. So my parents were very, very religious, and when I was little we went to church like clockwork, every Sunday. Not a real church, mind you, not something built out of stone in the Middle Ages, but this fancy modern building, all white and ridiculous fake beams and glowing displays. You'd hate it, Heather, she nodded at me. Ugh, probably, I said. But hey, to my parents, the most important thing about going to church was being friendly with the right people, climbing the social ladder, and though I hate to admit it, they were actually quite good at being a pair of greasy little toadies and sucking up to their social betters. Rain did little air quotes. And by the time I was about 9 or 10 I think that's when it happened they were actually pretty friendly with the vicar. Preacher. Whatever. They didn't call him a vicar because he wasn't COE, but it's basically the same thing, with a touch more insane ranting about modern fabrics causing hurricanes. TCH, I tooted under my breath. One Sunday afternoon my parents stayed behind after a service, for some kind of social call with the vicar and his wife. Some tea and cake nonsense. My parents didn't want their weird daughter hanging around, so they sent me off into the church grounds to amuse myself. Rain spread her hands as a grin crept onto her face. Now, I didn't give a toss about any of this. What did I care about? Well, the vicar had a daughter. Oh no, I said out loud. Rain laughed and turned to me, holding up a finger. We were 10. Seriously. Snot like that. Okay, I'm sorry, I said, blushing. It is you. We'll get there. Rain winked. This girl, her name was Gracie. Not Grace, but Gracie. We were actually in the same class at school, but we were so far apart in playground social status we may as well have come from different planets. She was a real little madam, nose in the air type, spoilt rotten by her parents, owned a pony. Meanwhile, I was a bit of a weird child. Kinda quiet. She gave me a side-eyes look, and I knew that was all Zheng was getting of Rain's peculiar personal history for the moment. So, there we are, two 10-year-old girls, alone in this stupid-looking ornamental garden of a crackpot church, while our parents amuse themselves discussing whatever adults discuss beyond earshot of their kids. Children's games make good stories, Zheng purred in the dramatic pause, and to my surprise, she sounded like she meant it. Oh, but we didn't play a game, Rain said, lighting up with slow-building glee. We decided to discuss theology. A 10-year-old's version of theology. Oh dear, I sighed. Oh dear is right. I don't remember how it started, probably with a totally innocent question, but seeing as to our vast gap in social status, Gracie got it into her head that she needed to assert dominance. RRRR, Zheng purred low and animal and appreciative. She understood dominance. She was pretty, she was popular, she was the daughter of an important man, Rain went on. She was blonde, she was wearing a nice dress, she wanted a place in the pecking order, and she'd absorbed all this jumbled up religious jargon. So little Gracie decided this made her better than me, holier than me, closer to God than me. And I was a weird little child, I was very quiet and very intense. So as we're wandering through this garden and poking at the ground with sticks, she's telling me this mishmash of half-remembered Bible stories, like she's trying to instruct me, and I think she read my quiet lack of giving a shit as defiance, when I was honestly just listening, because she was kinda pretty and even at 10 years old I sort of wanted to hold her hand or be her friend or something. Rain shrugged. Aw, Rain. I couldn't help myself. Wait, you won't be going, in a minute. Rain struggled to control her smile. So eventually we reached the rear of the garden. It's pretty secluded, there's high walls, vines climbing the brickwork, some tall trees, and an ornamental pond, where we pause for a moment. Gracie's really worked up by now, thinks I don't know my place. She was puffed up with importance because this is her daddy's church, and he's a holy man, and she thinks I'm not recognizing her place, that she's special and one of God's chosen or whatever. So she turns to me and declares with complete confidence that she can walk on water. I involuntarily put my hands to my mouth, eyes going wide. Oh no, oh Rain, don't tell me she drowned. No, nothing like that. That would be really dark, I said. We're starting off light. Relax. Zheng was grinning, chuckling softly in the back of her throat. Yeah, I know, Rain said. Blasphemous. Anyway, I was smart enough about metaphor and meaning to know that she was barking up completely the wrong tree, and I told her so. Only Jesus walks on water, right? No, says Gracie, my dad says I can walk on water, and my dad knows Jesus better than your dad. And we were nearly shouting now, how kids do sometimes when they argue, from 0 to 60 in an instant. And I was thinking, well, she's pretty, but she's kinda dumb. TCH, I tooted softly, but I was gripping a pillow now, squeezing it in my lap on the edge of my seat. So I said, prove it, and I pointed at the pond. Rain mimed the gesture. And to her credit, Gracie nearly tried to walk on water. But she didn't? I asked in a whisper. Rain shook her head. She almost took the first step, but she stopped at the last moment, with her shoe hovering about an inch from the surface of the pond. I remember the way her face changed, it was so subtle. This moment of doubt, the moment she realized she'd talked herself into a corner, and she was going to have to back down or apologize. To me. Little weird Rain, with the stare and the ugly clothes and the slimy parents. She was about to be humiliated, in front of a social inferior. Rain pulled a faux tragic expression. Deserved the lesson, Zheng purred, so soft it was almost inaudible. Naya, she didn't. At least I didn't think so, not back then. I wanted to save her. So I did. Rain couldn't keep the grin off anymore, bursting into full shit-eating life across her face. Before she could pull her foot back to dry land, I put one hand against her back and woof. Rain mimed a hearty shove. You pushed a child into a pond. I exploded. I was a child too. Rain laughed, then flicked suddenly serious. And it did save her. It was only a foot deep, but it was full of algae and pond scum and probably rat piss, and she went splashing in face first. Her dress was absolutely ruined and soaking, water in her hair, she was bawling her eyes out. I jumped in after her and pulled her to her feet, because she was so paralyzed by the surprise of it. She was crying in my face, sobbing with, well, I guess embarrassment, asking why I'd done that, why I'd ruined everything, why anybody would be so nasty. Rain shrugged. Nowadays I know why I did it, because I figured that a ruined dress was a lesser wound than having to apologize to me, but I didn't figure for breaking her rudimentary faith. But back then, with this girl crying at me, I didn't have an answer. Oh, Rain. So I said the first thing that made theological sense. I looked her dead in the eye and said, maybe I'm the devil. Rain paused for effect. I was open-mouthed with disbelief. Zheng was purring like a tiger. She wasn't terrified of me, Rain went on, more casually. She just cried a lot, clung to me, let me lead her back to the church. Didn't tell her parents what had really happened either, she just went along with my lie that we were playing and fell in. I went home, parents told me off for getting the child of an important person dirty, and I forgot about the whole thing. Rain paused and Mock hesitated, then shrugged. Gracie didn't forget though. 3.5 years later, when word was getting around school that I was a massive lesbo, she cornered me in the gym cupboard and asked me if I was the devil. I said, maybe, and then we made out for 20 minutes. I burst out laughing, I couldn't help it. Rain. To my surprise, Zheng barked a laugh too. I know. It wasn't my fault. Rain raised her hands in surrender. I think I awakened something in her, but I never found out what. Look, wherever she ended up, I hope she found somebody more suited to play the devil for her. And that's the story. That's the end. Rain finished, looking at Zheng, waiting for approval or a round of applause or a scoff of derision. But she got none of those. Zheng just glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. Shaman. I think it's all true. Even the kiss? Rain asked, surprised. Especially the kiss, that's very you. I tooted. Point to the Yashu, Zheng purred with a sharp smile. No penalty. Rain grinned back and scooped up the dice with one hand, holding them in a fist. But no penalty doesn't mean I can't choose to roll more, right? I'm going all in, all 6 starting dice. Zheng leaned forward, intrigued, predatory intensity awakening on her face. The odds do not favor that. Better to start small, hold each victory, not pray for strength. You know that, Yashu. What is this? Rain shook the dice, clack-a-clacking in her hand, and grinned back at Zheng. Guts.